It's 7 o'clock. I am calling this meeting of the governing board to order. If you would all rise and ask Mrs. Brown to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have roll call, please?
Dr. Skidmore,
Here.
Mrs. Matura,
Here.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Here.
Mrs. Case,
Here.
Mrs. Bacon.
Here.
Thank you. Approval of agenda, Dr. Welsh.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Items approved by consent will not come up for discussion during the meeting, but will be approved when the agenda is adopted. This is possible since members of the governing board receive the agenda along with backup materials at least 24 hours prior to the meeting and have time to review and consider all items. Prior to the agenda being adopted, members of the governing board or audience may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and brought to the floor for discussion at the appropriate place on the agenda. I would like to offer the agenda as posted.
Would any members of the governing board wish to move anything from the consent agenda? Any member of the public? Seeing none, Mrs. Case, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next is governing board, governing board statements. Mrs. Matura, no. Dr. Skidmore, no. Mrs. Case, do you have anything?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you. I have served on the governing board for 16 years, and I know all of my board members to be caring, considerate leaders. Some people have said that we're not reading your emails. I know that is false. We are. We have read all of your emails, and most of these members of the school board have served in leadership position of parents and are as rabble-rousers as I am, and have spent their time and energy trying to do what's best for kids. And that has been our mantra for years. This is a very difficult time. And to let you know that we are listening, I wanted to read a couple things. I hear what's going on. I am not a medical expert. I have never claimed to be a medical expert. So if I say anything later, I am not a medical expert. And I think even the medical experts have changed their mind quite a few times. So with that being said, I want to read a few things. This is from a parent. I am so deeply saddened. My children have been in the PV district for 6 years now. I used to be so proud to be part of the district. I would brag about how amazing our schools were. I recently bought a home in the district and have had a vision that my children would go to the district through high school. I am faced with a very tough choice that will impact my family and mostly my children, whether or not to stay. My children are consistently honor roll students. While online, my son took a STARS test. The teacher emailed me that he fell below average, and she recommended tutoring 3 days a week. My son was in tears, and it caused confusion and stress for our family. I asked his wonderful teacher if he could retake the test when they go back in person, and she graciously allowed it. He retook the test and scored average and consistent where he had been in the past. I constantly had to ask teachers to retake tests or redo projects as they were getting D's and F's, and that is the only reason they ended the semester with decent grades. Otherwise, they would have failed. I'm so very thankful for their teachers. My children developed anxiety, stress, and negativity toward school while online. When back in person, they thrived. Their grades were up. They were happy. No anxiety or stress. They rode the bus for the first time, and I saw their independence and confidence grow. Sadly, just over a month of in person, and you have made the difficult decision to close. I'm pleading with you to rethink that decision Online school is not enough education. Our kids are falling further behind every day, and we have them online and isolated. We will never get this time back to redo. The well-being is literally in your hands. How will my son prepare for middle school next year? This is not an education. I am pleading with you to start listening and to have open minds and rethink your decision. Dear Valley sent a letter out to parents which stated, our data clearly shows us that many of our students are not as successful in virtual settings. Teachers are reporting that students are just beginning to catch up on lost learning experience during the time schools were closed. I have observed this with my own children. You are putting such a burden on families and children by closing schools. That is from a parent. I chose that one because it was significantly encapsulated many thoughts. Now I want to read a letter from a teacher. She teaches in our district, second grade. When kids walked into my classroom on October 8th, they had terrible handwriting, their fine motor skills were lacking, and reading was almost non-existent. Fast forward 6 weeks, and the growth from being in person is astounding. Handwriting, holding a pencil, and fine motor skills have drastically improved. Reading, phonemic awareness, blending, segmenting, fluency, and comprehension have also improved. On October 9th, I did a screening, and one of my low read kids scored 8 words read. Yesterday, that same measure was used, and he improved his score to 34 words read. Kids are thriving, learning, making progress, and growth. Please do not take away all the ground we have worked so hard to make up. Teachers are essential, schools are essential. And she has told me many, many times how she wants to keep kids in the classroom. And that is evidenced by many other teachers also want to do that. But then there are the teachers who are the best teachers I know who are 70 years old and they can't physically be in a classroom and have that potential of risk. I have a son who moved from California to Utah so their child could go to first grade full time in person. I understand what you're talking about. This board understands. We're in a difficult time. I don't know the answers. I have spoken to a physician in a large hospital here in town, and he says the children are not in the hospital. He's an expert in respiratory issues, but they have older teachers, and that is difficult. I do not know the answers to this, but I wanted to make sure that you knew we are listening. I will do everything in my power for kids to be able to be back to school next semester. I don't know what else to do. I am so sorry. There are 18 more days, I think, of school days left. Teachers are working really, really hard to do what's best for kids. We all know that. But there are teachers who go to work in fear. This is a difficult time. I don't know all the answers, but I wanted to let you know and address some of the fears you have and let you know that yes, we are reading your emails. We do listen and we do understand what's in your hearts. I didn't want to close down schools. I was in a minority. It's just that this board works really hard to do what's best for kids. Do we always agree? No. Do I respect my board members? Yes. And I would hope that you also respect these board members who voluntarily give up years and years of their life to do this. It is a very difficult, thankless job. This has been a hard year, and I would implore all of you to be respectful in your comments and be respectful. I know this is hard in your families. I've read those letters to let you know we are listening and we hear you. And every one of us want to do what's best for kids. We are in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know what to say. I want to teach on the playground. I want to teach outside. I want to do whatever we can do to teach kids. This is a hard time, but I wanted to let you as parents know who are here that we are listening, and we're not doing this for any other reason than the decision has been made with the metrics. And now, since last week when the decision was made, the metrics have gotten worse. I do not believe COVID is spreading in the schools. I believe we should close restaurants, we should close bars, we should close gyms long before we close the schools. I couldn't agree with that more. We are limited by what our government will allow. So I just wanted to say that. I'm trying to be as sincere with you as I possibly can be. I empathize with you. I understand the value of teaching one-on-one. When I try to teach grandkids online, it's very difficult. I truly understand. Our teachers are amazing. Let's not tear each other down. Let's try to come to some understanding of what we can do as this next semester starts and be respectful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Case. Mrs. Bacon? No. And I don't either. So the next on the agenda is awards and recognitions.
And at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Anderson for our awards and recognitions.
Good evening, President Greenberg, governing board members, Dr. Welsh, members of cabinet, and attendees, both in person and virtual. We have one employee recognition to share with you this evening. Our honoree is the recipient of the Paradise Valley Education Support Professional of the Month. PVSEA Vice President, Mr. Robert Fowler, will make the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, President Greenberg, Governing Board, Dr. Welsh, Cabinet, and guests. Tonight, the Paradise Valley Support Employee Association is excited to present the November ESP of the Month to Kyle O'Neill, a facilities HVAC tech. Kyle was nominated by multiple staff members and the principal. Some of the things said about Kyle are: Kyle O'Neill is an outstanding PV employee and representative of the facilities department. In my 5 years as principal at Desert Springs Preparatory, I have been lucky to have Kyle as our air conditioning tech. I have always been extremely impressed with Kyle's work ethic, friendliness, and positive attitude. He is quick to respond, communicates effectively, and is proactive with our school needs. Kyle always takes the time to give me an update on what he is working on, and I really appreciate how kind he is to my staff. Kyle always goes above and beyond. I can't tell you the number of times he was called to my PE portable over the years because my air conditioner was not working. Of course, it always happened when we were in a heat wave. Kyle always showed up with a smile and willingness to try to figure out the problem. He is an asset to PVUSD, and we are lucky to have him as our AC tech at Desert Springs Prep. Kyle has been a tremendous asset to all of us in room 16. Our air conditioner was on the fritz for the first couple of weeks of school, and he came out and saved the day. We are eternally grateful for the Arctic temperatures that have been made their way back into our classroom. Again, we would like to congratulate Kyle on being the November ESP of the Month.
Sorry,
Congratulations.
Kyle's not here, but please convey our congratulations.
And that concludes our recognitions this evening.
I'm sorry, Michelle.
No, that's all right.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is call to the public. We have cards here and we have responses. Michelle, do you want to?
Sure. Good evening again. Due to the requirement by the governor to limit large group gatherings, as part of our traditional call to the public, we will also be including virtual public comments submitted via the public input form. Due to the Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take actions on items not listed on the agenda. Members of the public were encouraged to complete the online comment form by 4 p.m. today. All comments that were received by 4 have been sent to the governing board members, and the superintendent's office has received all those comments as well. We would like to thank our stakeholders for voicing their thoughts and providing input for today's meeting. We received a total of 188 unique online comment submissions for tonight's meeting, with 156 indicating a desire to include them among those being read. So that we can value the comments submitted while ensuring sufficient time to conduct our business for this meeting, the total time allotted for public comments will be limited to 90 minutes. Both in-person and submitted comments will be limited to 1.5 minutes. Public comment will begin with a member of the public physically in attendance and then take turns with comments submitted online until the time for public comment has been expended. A random number generator was used to randomize the order of comments submitted online to be read at the meeting. Dr. Corson and I will read the comments submitted online, and we apologize in advance for mispronouncing anyone's name.
Okay, so I have alphabetized. We didn't put these in any other order, but alphabetical. So the first card I have is from Josh Atkins.
President Greenberg, board members, Dr. Welsh, and cabinet. I will keep this brief because I know you have many comments to hear. Thank you. Thank you for your diligence in making sure that you are doing the best you can for our students and for our staff. I'm in year 4 as a proud music teacher at Quail Run Elementary, and I've always felt supported by this board, and I've always felt comfortable in the decisions that they make and the directions that cabinet has brought down from the board. I know you're going to hear a lot of comments tonight, and I wanted to make sure that one of the ones you heard was a thank you. Thank you.
Our next comment is by Audrey Steinkamp. As a healthcare provider in our community, I am highly concerned for our children. Dr. Welsh and the governing board are going against the Arizona Department of Health's recommendations. They do not recommend going online for our current metrics. You are very aware of this. The time is now to adhere to the recommendations. Governor Ducey announced that he believes kids should have access to in-person schooling. Parents are pleading with you to listen and give us a choice. We are not having outbreaks in our elementary schools. You know this. You're so hyper-focused on what the community numbers are doing, yet our schools and the policies they are implementing are mitigating the spread for this age group. I implore you and the governing board to really think about our poor children and their mental health when you go to sleep at night, and really dig deep to want to make their education and mental health at the forefront of your concerns and discussions. Excuse me. The time is now to make a change and keep our kids in school where they are safe and learning.
Thank you. The next card I have is from Courtney Berman.
Good evening. My name is Courtney Berman, and I'm a junior at Horizon High School. Like many other high schoolers, I thrive off of social interaction. So naturally, I was excited to return back to school after our long break. Within 4 days of me being back, I was informed that I had been exposed to 3 people who tested positive for COVID-19. I was completely quarantined for 16 days, and let me just say that was extremely difficult on my mental health. I decided not to return back to school after that because the risk was just too high. But being online for 6 hours a day is both physically and mentally draining. I'm a straight A student who is involved in many extracurriculars, and my grades are starting to drop. I'm really struggling with the structure of the full school day. I'm losing motivation, procrastinating, and I end up with a headache after every single school day. It's not natural for developing kids to sit in front of a screen for this long. This is not how our school day should be structured. I understand the importance of a good education, but shouldn't the mental health and personal well-being of the students take precedence? I know it's not safe to be in person right now, and I understand that. But by allowing us to have a half day, students are more likely to succeed and will be happier and healthier. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and thank you for everything you continue to do for the students.
Jacqueline Norris. When have you looked into the eyes of a child? Eyes that had blank stares, no emotion, withdrawn. Think about that and look at all the kids who are back in school. They have a sparkle back. They show they are happy by smiling with their eyes. You recognize these looks when they have mastered a new skill, the happiness knowing they passed a test they never thought they would. Now look at these same eyes on Friday when you have to say goodbye for another 6 weeks. Look into the eyes of a child telling you they may be going to another school that is staying open. We have 3 weeks left until winter break. Every student in this district has been cheated out of being in school again. Let them stay in class until winter break. Being at school is a safer place for them. We follow the protocols, we do everything you have told us to do, and it's still not good enough. The virus is not spreading because of kids, they are just caught up in it.
Thank you. The next card we have is Jessica Berman.
Hello, my name is Jessica Berman. I'm an 8th grader at Desert Shadows Middle School. I want to explain to you why the half-day schedule is so important to students. 16.5%, or about 7.7 million children between the ages of 6 and 17 have a diagnosed mental health disorder. Researchers have found that limited face-to-face social contact nearly doubles someone's risk of having depression. Study participants who met in person regularly with family and friends are less likely to report symptoms of depression compared with participants who emailed or spoke on the telephone. While being online with only 7 4-minute breaks gives students a total of 28 minutes of face-to-face interaction during the school day. Having a shortened schedule will allow students to spend more time with their friends and family and less time staring at a screen. While I was online for the first quarter of the year, it was really hard on me. My mental health was struggling. I would get awful migraines, and it was very difficult for me to sit still and pay attention with the learning environment being my own home. Having a shortened day will allow me to take a break from the computer, get outside, and rest my eyes before completing my homework. I hope you will continue the shortened schedule until we can get back safely in person, which is where I really want to be. Thank you.
Susan Seep, thank you for being one of the few districts committed to using scientifically guided benchmarks rather than emotions, opinions, and supposition to make these life and death decisions. Tonight, you have an opportunity to demonstrate what is more important for the future of PVUSD, that some are satisfied immediately, or that you maintain the trust that you have earned from decades of cooperation with all of your partners in education.
Thank you. The next card is Lori Berman.
Good evening. For the last 11 years, I've been an active parent and volunteer. With the modified online schedule, we are giving teachers the opportunity to plan, prepare, and give students additional help for those who need it. Many students are suffering from screen fatigue. They are getting headaches, having problems with their eyes, all kinds of health problems from all of the screen time. Doing virtual school is an intense level of concentration and focus. The decrease in screen time will help students, give them time to get outside, get exercise, and take a break from the screen time before they have to get back on for their homework. On November 23rd, we have a great opportunity to see how the modified schedule will work. We have 17 days of online teaching between Monday and winter break. Then let's reevaluate. The teachers were surveyed, and they told you what they needed. This is your opportunity to let them know that you heard them and support them. There are a lot of teachers, staff, students, and families dealing with an increase of mental health issues and screen fatigue. Let's share information with them on how to connect with our amazing social workers and psychologists. We have community resources to share. Let's utilize them. I want everyone back in person as soon as possible, but I want it to be a safe and healthy environment for everyone. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Let's stop and take a breath. Let's remember to support each other and do what we can. Again, thank you for all you do for our community.
Deb Brent, I believe the modified schedule for high school is a positive move for both students and staff. We should try it through December. If it doesn't work, then go back to regular schedule in the fall. I will not be returning to in-person in January as teaching has been so stressful. I am a 20-year veteran teacher and have never had the stress I have from teaching in person. Please keep online school for everyone until a cure. Please consider keeping all students online through May. Thank you.
The next card is John Budd.
Good evening. I'm a local orthodontist here in our community, and so I interact a lot with children that are part of the PV school district. I have 5 of my own children, all of which are in public schools in the PV school district. And I just want to, my mom was a teacher for 25 years, so I have nothing but the greatest respect for those who work in education. And I just want to acknowledge what a difficult position everyone here is in, because no matter what you choose, there's going to be a group of people that are very angry with the choice that you've made. So you can't win. And I think that goes without saying. But because of the position that you're in, whatever decision is made has to be based on facts, on data, on numbers. And I think that at the time that the metrics were created for deciding whether to stay in person or go online, you were making decisions with the best information that you had. We now have more specific information. The metrics that we're using are based on community spread in the community at large. But I think the evidence has gotten to be almost indisputable, in my opinion, and I don't have time in the time that I have allotted to me, but I think you've seen some of those studies that have come out recently that there's not a lot of virtually any person-to-person transmission within the schools. The numbers are going up. I don't think any person in their right mind could argue with that, but
Dr. Budd?
Yes.
That was the 90.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Let me just say one last thing and I'll sit down. According to the CDC, I am in one of the highest risk professions in the world as an orthodontist. The American Dental Association just came out with data this month that said that less than 1% of dentists in the U.S. have tested positive for coronavirus. And what that says to me is that masks work. So I think we can make in-person school work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madeline Anuso. I teach 4th grade at a school south of the 101. Although we have not had any confirmed cases of COVID, I have had nearly a third of my class quarantined at one time or another. I want to thank you for following the adjusted metrics set earlier in the year and making the difficult decision to return to online learning. We all know that students are better off at school, but this move is being made to protect students, teachers, and their families. Ultimately, what will a student remember more? Not being able to socialize for a few months, or being responsible for the illness or death of a loved one or teacher because they were asymptomatic carrier of COVID. I want to ensure parents that no matter what modality we are teaching in, we are doing our best to meet the academic and social emotional needs of all of our students.
Thank you. The next card I have is from Kevin Cantwell.
Hi. I'll probably echo a little bit of what orthodontist John said and probably what people will say to follow. But the CDC says to prioritize reopening schools, given the many known and established benefits of in-person learning while slowing the spread inside schools. I'm Kevin. I'm a father of 2 beautiful elementary school girls. And I'm not here to throw stones at anybody. I'm really here for them. And just want to thank you guys for the commitment that you have to our children. You guys have been put in a really not an envious situation and to make a lot of tough decisions. So thank you. But I can't personally agree with some of the decisions that have been made, which I'm sure you'll hear a lot of. So my question really is why are we closing? But also why are we closing all of the schools all once? I think the schools the teachers have obviously been put in a very difficult situation. So I think we can all appreciate that, trying to juggle remote and in-person learning. Also, the teachers that have that can't be exposed, that have possible, medical conditions that put them at risk. But I'm assuming they were there in August. So this isn't something new that's pertinent right now. So the schools seem to have done a great job as far as identifying positive cases, restricting the spread and kind of controlling it. They're much better than the local YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club, which is where we will probably end up.
Mr. I hate to say, I really wish that was louder, but that was the buzzer.
That was my time.
Yeah, sorry.
I ramble. That's fine.
Thank you.
The next comment is from Heather Glazer. Please keep our schools open. We are in unprecedented times and must act upon fact, not fear. Schools are not transmitting the virus. You yourselves have acknowledged this to be true. I implore you to be agile as new information and data is available. There is no shame in changing course based upon metrics, scenarios you voted upon months ago, knowing the data you now have, which again shows that schools are indeed safe due to masking and all other necessary protocols. Our children are relying on you to give them the education they deserve. Online is not the answer. I have a kindergartner and a second grader. Despite the best efforts from their amazing teachers, they cannot learn to write and read online. They have thrived while in person, but were frustrated, distracted, and disengaged online as they are too little to watch a screen all day. Failing to allow them an in-person education during this crucial time could cost them tremendously in their future. As a taxpayer, I'm asking you to allow me a choice in putting my children in school. Those who want to stay home should be given the same choice. Failing to allow both choices is a failure to our community when science doesn't suggest otherwise.
Thank you. The next part I have is Lisa Farr.
Thank you. I'm actually here to speak up for the over 4,000 people that wrote my name in during this last election. So I'm not alone. There is a huge group of your constituents, taxpayers, that are demanding the option of in-person learning. Mrs. Case, you said it perfectly, but I also know you're in the minority with this group. And unfortunately, I don't feel like the rest of you are hearing us. We absolutely have to have this option. You're not medical experts, and we need you to go by the science. The science doesn't show the transmission in our schools. And we have 10 schools that have had 0 cases, and you're shutting them down. I don't understand that. It's not right. The Tucson Medical Center CEO urges all superintendents to increase in-person learning. And what are we doing? We're shutting it down. It's not right. We are, as a board, you are acting out of fear rather than facts and data and medical science. And you're not medical experts. So please give these children the option they deserve. There are teachers that absolutely understand the importance of in-person learning. They want to be in person to teach our children. There are children that cannot be successful virtually. Please find solutions. Please make the effort. I'm volunteering my time to sit on the scorecard. I will help find solutions. I know we can do it. We can absolutely do this. Let's be a leader as a district and find those solutions and represent all of our constituents. Thank you.
The next comment is from Seth Nickerson. Getting back in the classroom has been invaluable for my 2 children, 3rd grader and a 5th grader at Sonoran Sky. It has improved their mood, their focus, and they have been learning better than they have during their time with remote learning. I'm impressed with the job my children's teachers have delivered online learning. I know it's not easy for anyone. I think the district needs to prepare more training on technology and distance learning prep for teachers. I've heard teachers mention that they struggle with this, and having kids in class and online is double the work. It feels like the district is giving in to teachers who are complaining about teaching to 2 audiences. Other districts are keeping in-person learning going. The district should put more pressure on families to be safer outside of school to keep the case numbers down. This requires sacrifice, not going to restaurants, pausing team sports, etc. It's not easy, but it would keep kids in school. PV got a late start with in-person learning and now is one of the first to go back to remote learning. Scottsdale Unified, which is right next to our school, is keeping open. They are using a hybrid model. In retrospect, we could have had kids back in class for a lot more weeks. I also believe that schools are probably one of the safest environments to be in right now with all the safety measures in place. Parents need to see some urgency from the district to get the schools open again as soon as possible. Any delays now is going to cost the district to lose students to other districts and charter and private schools. Closing schools again and keeping them closed for a long period of time is going to do more harm than good. We must do better for.
Thank you. The next, excuse me, the next card is Kerwin Franklin.
Hi, I'm Kerwin Franklin. I'm a businesswoman that travels globally and a mother of 5, and I want to urge you to take a stand for in-person education. It is essential. The science is in support of our kids, as many people said, and your personal opinions should not be the driving force for this decision. Yesterday, Governor Ducey and today, Vice President Mike Pence recommended keeping schools open. The CDC has in fact never recommended closing schools. Data came out today in UNICEF report from 191 countries that shows no consistent link between reopening schools and increased rates of coronavirus infection. The United Nations agency said there is strong evidence that this basic safety measures in place, the net benefits of keeping schools open outweigh the cost of closing them. One day, these kids must compete in a global market, and losing a year of school will only set them behind, not to mention the emotional isolation, anxiety, and depression you are inflicting on them. If we were in a pandemic, you would not be going to the grocery store, playing sports, getting your nails or hair done, or going out to dinner. The US 2020 total deaths is less than 2019. I have never heard of this in a pandemic. We've had smallpox, measles, Spanish flu, and polio, and we have never shut the country down before. Parents have a right to make this choice about what risk is acceptable, and we have spoken. We slowed the spread, and we did our part. Enough is enough. 170 million tests in the United States. Of course, testing rates will go up, yet there's no standards for PCR exist. I'm not a doctor, you're not a doctor, but my pediatrician believes they need to be in school. Thank you.
And the next comment is from A. Burr. I'd like to thank the PV Governing Board for returning to virtual learning next week in response to the rising community spread. Reminder, the school is not responsible for parenting your kids. Schools are a place for teaching and learning. For centuries, parents have pushed off parental responsibility onto teachers and schools, and like many other things, this pandemic has unearthed this dirty little secret. Parents, you all have smartphones. Search for mental health support for your kids. There are free resources available. Search out the signs of depression and suicide and take the initiative to be there for your kids. Connect with your kids. Look them in the eye and listen to them. Talk them through problem-solving their feelings. Learn about your own feelings. And for goodness sake, if you're worried about Xbox time, take the Xbox away. I'm not a perfect parent, far from it, but I'm aware enough to not force the school to do my job as a parent.
The next card is Elena Gall.
Good evening. I have 2 beautiful little girls in elementary school within Paradise Valley. As a little bit of background, I have worked 16 years as a clinical social worker in the pediatric hospital here locally. I can tell you, in the last 8 months, the amount of suicides, self-harm, depression, and anxiety we have seen has skyrocketed. You do not understand that closing our schools has caused a significant mental health crisis in our neighborhoods. I also have a child who has an IEP and who is in a communication development class. And in the last 8 months, the regression has been significant. I am emotional because in the last 5 weeks, my daughter has made the greatest progress being in person, which is where our children belong. I understand we are in the middle of the pandemic, but we also can keep our children in school safely. It has been shown that the transmission is not happening in our schools. It is happening out in the community. Our children deserve better from this board. Our children deserve better than they're getting. I understand teachers have been put in an incredibly hard situation. Give parents the option of being in person. Give parents the option of keeping their children at home if they wish. There should be an online only option and an in-person option. I am devastated by what you have done to my children. Thank you.
The next comment is from Celeste Brown. I would like to speak in favor of a half-day schedule for the remainder of the semester while we engage in online learning. It is my understanding that we as teachers still will provide instruction and practices as we have, and that the afternoon time then gives students the opportunity to complete their work. This afternoon time would be even more important for teachers to provide separate meeting times with students who need additional help. I already had 2 meetings set up for Monday and to grade assignments in an even more timely manner, allowing students more timely feedback as we head into finals. This semester has been disrupted enough, and some additional time to devote to our students and provide them valuable feedback would be of much needed assistance.
Thank you. The next card is Annika Gower. I apologize if I mispronounced.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and represent the students and their point of view. I'm here to speak in favor of half-day reduced instruction time. Research has clearly shown that after a certain time in front of a screen, students' focus starts to reduce. Longer classroom means less absorption of the material being taught. This is unfair to both the students and the teachers who put hard work preparing for those lessons. For online instruction, smaller but focused learning is the best way to do it. Once school is over, the screen time does not end. It is followed by homework and studying the material. This increased screen time brings many other issues besides just the focus problem. The longer hours in front of screens also brings other problems like headaches, tired eyes, and inability to get proper sleep due to increased exposure. All this results in students' learning rate decreasing over time. Tired students unable to absorb the material and other health issues that come with lack of sleep. I would like you to consider not just my words, but the science and data from reputable doctors and researchers. Please consider reduced instruction time as an option with benefits for everyone. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity to represent me and my peers' point of view.
The next comment is from Laura Senefton. I want to thank the governing board for following original guidelines for returning to online learning. Thank you for considering the safety of your students, staff, and community. Your work for PVUSD is appreciated.
Thank you. The next card I have is Jim Guyman. Oh, sorry. Saunter.
So my name is Jim Guyman. I am, oh, there's a timer here. Awesome. I'm a husband, father, and father of 4 wonderful daughters, a former high school math teacher in the Peoria School District, a pediatric dentist, and a proponent of keeping the in-person learning option available for this semester and for next semester. My office is located within the PVUSD boundaries, and the majority of my patients, my children included, attend the schools in the district. I love our children and young people, and I appreciate the efforts of the teachers to struggle to fulfill their own roles as teachers and mentors for our children during these challenging times. And I also recognize that you are civil servants, except for you, Dr. Welsh. I think you get paid, actually. So thank you for giving your time for the students and members of our community. Thank you too, Dr. Welsh. My obligation as a dentist to my patients is to follow the most up-to-date evidence-based recommendations and guidelines. Somebody mentioned the UNICEF report. It's like 28 pages, and I have it if anybody wants to read it. They released this in advance of World Children's Day tomorrow. I echo the comments that this is based on recent data and studies that you didn't have access to when you made your decisions. And I think now you can update your information and make more informed decisions. I hope that you will, and go with the guidelines that have been outlined by the county. Do we care about teachers? Yes. A recent study from Yale University tracked 57,000 childcare workers located in all 50 states. I don't have time to mention more about it other than it found no difference in the rate of coronavirus infections between those who kept working in childcare and those who didn't. Masks and social distancing are working in schools for kids and teachers. Make an evidence-based decision that protects you and us in appropriate ways.
Thank you. Janine Ryan Franson. I'm a teacher at Mountain Trail Middle School's Journey Program. I like to advocate for the 9 to 1 o'clock modified PV Connect learning model. Not only will students benefit from reduced screen fatigue, but opportunities for purposeful direct interventions for students who are in need of extra learning support will become easier to implement. Educators know that individualized and small group direct instruction yield positive results. The flexibility of the afternoon schedule will allow opportunities for not only interventions, but for the enrichment and support of our gifted learners. Social and emotional needs will be easier to address with more time to schedule meetings with both students and parents. It seems that the community may be confused about the purpose of the afternoon time. The school day will not be done at 1 o'clock. Students will be engaged in learning support structures that are more individualized to meet students' needs in the more flexible afternoon time period. Teachers will be able to breathe a bit instead of working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, which was our reality during our last time of PV Connect. We must be realistic during these times, and the modified PV Connect model will meet everyone's needs.
Thank you. The next card is Anna Claus.
Good evening. I'm Anna Klaas. I'm a retired PV teacher with 2 students still in the district. Mrs. Case, you opened with, we do what's best for kids. And according to the science, what's best for kids, what's safest for kids is for them to be in school in person. The medical professionals are telling us that today. My kids have put on masks, they've sanitized their hands, they've not hugged their friends, they've played without toys on the playground. They've done everything that was asked of them because they were told if they did that, they could stay in school. And now they're being told it's not enough. In addition, we're now being told that perhaps they'll be going to half days or partial days. That's not what is best for kids. They're here for an education. I have a high schooler who's looking forward to college in a couple of years, and she wants to know if she'll have the right credits, if she'll have enough information. Will she need remedial education because of her half days in compromised education? If we're doing what's best for kids, if we're following the science as we know it today, they need to be in school in person, period.
Brian Glazer. As a parent of 2 elementary children, I find it critical that my children continue in-person learning during these formative years. The education and social advances children have made in the weeks in-person versus online are obvious and considerable to me as a parent. I understand and appreciate that some parents would prefer to keep their children at home, but this is not the majority of parents by a long shot. It is with great disappointment that my children may continue to attend school in a district governed by people who are fearful and unable to adapt to very fluid and dynamic situation. I ask the board and the superintendent to think outside the box on how we can keep our elementary students at school. They follow the rules in place at their age. I ask the board to make quick decisions with the understanding that you may make a wrong decision rather than be paralyzed by fear. I ask the board to follow state guidelines, not make up their own. Why should my children be out of school with their friends and other districts are still learning in person? It's not because we are smarter or looking at different data. It's because we are scared and paralyzed by fear hidden under the guise of protecting us.
The next card is from Jim Claus.
Thank you. I believe in science. Decisions should be controlled by science and the best interest of the kids. This potential school closing is anti-science. It is also contrary to the best interest of the kids. Everybody else has pointed out how you're going against every single other governmental opinion. I don't know how you can do that. You're using arbitrary and capricious metrics that have no basis in science. You want to roll out some expert. As a lawyer, I can get an expert to say anything. But more importantly, you don't balance it at all with the consideration of the damage you're doing to children. The Berman comments show you online education is an oxymoron. We need to be honest here tonight. I will call it as it is. Members Greenberg and Bacon, you've got to go. You're following a radical political agenda. We can see that. You must be recalled. Member Matura, I'm not sure. I would ask you by the end of this meeting tonight, declare you're in favor of open schools or also be recalled. Superintendent Welsh, I can't express to you the depth of my disappointment in you. You're supposed to be the advocate for the kids, not go with the flow on the majority of the board. Speak up tonight, or when the recall happens, I'm sorry, but you need to go too. We need a recall.
Jeffrey Miller. By not having our kids go at school, we are creating many problems for them. As adults and educators, we should be looking out for their best interest. I believe this is not happening. As adults and educators, you have taken an approach that is against teaching in person, which they are thriving in, and having more stringent matrix than Maricopa County. I don't know how educators who don't work in the field can create a more stringent matrix than Maricopa County and officials that are looking out for the best interest of the entire community. My daughter has an IEP and needs help that is not being given with online learning. I feel that you are taking care of the parents that don't want to send their kids to school, but punishing the kids that want to be at school and their parents. As a firefighter who was on the front lines and helping people mitigate COVID, I believe with the precautions in place, wearing masks, washing your hands, and not going to school if you were sick, the kids should be able to remain in school. Be educators and continue to educate.
The next card is from Jamie Cruzel Thomas.
I'm here to speak to the board tonight, both as a mental health professional and as a concerned parent in our district. Earlier this year, when hospital resources were constrained and we lacked effective treatment options for COVID, my family followed the statewide stay-at-home guidance strictly. My son, a previously happy, energetic 9-year-old, began to struggle. He started having crippling anxiety attacks, stomach aches, losing weight, trouble sleeping, classic signs of anxiety and depression in a child. It was like you neglected to water a plant, and over time you were watching it wilt and die in front of you, except it's your child. What happened on October 12th when schools reopened was not what we expected. I expected to get calls from the nurse that he needed to be picked up because he had an attack again and couldn't calm himself down. But it didn't happen that way. As quickly as it came, it left. Being back at school with his friends, teachers, allowed to be a kid and around other kids, it brought him back. He is not alone. Studies suggest that depression and anxiety disorders are prevalent in 30 to 40% of our kids since COVID. 1 in 5 teens are expressing at least fleeting suicidal ideation. That is 20% of our middle and high schoolers. So as you think about keeping our community safe, remember there are many ways to harm a child. Our schools were doing well keeping case counts low, not seeing spread as a result of in-person schooling. Dr. Welsh said himself, along with Dr. Chris, that schools were not exacerbating the community spread. So I'm here tonight to ask you both as a mom and as a mental health professional to reconsider data benchmarks as a way of looking at school safety. We ask you to be creative and come up with solutions to keep our kids in school. Thank you.
Jamie Bessler. Good day. I'm the parent of a high school sophomore at Pinnacle High. She started PV Connect in August and went back in person in October for 2 days prior to returning back to PV Connect due to COVID cases on campus. My husband is considered high risk based on his cancer. PV Connect has worked well for our daughter. She is responsible and knows what assignments are due and how to turn them in. I'm requesting the board to consider continuing PV Connect in the same current format. I'm worried that with a half-day program, that time on task, new materials presented, and skill mastery will be shortchanged. A few suggestions for high school students. Assign them to specific online study sessions with their teachers in the afternoon. Cooperative learning groups assigned monthly for students to work together virtually. Thank you.
The next card is from Jeff Miller.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about keeping schools open. I'm a proud father of 2 kids that are in the Paradise Valley School District. My daughter's on an IEP. She struggles. I sat at home with her and I was basically her student aide. I'm all about trying to help her. I grew up with a learning disability as well. But she struggled and struggled and struggled. The only way that she got better was when she actually made contact with her teacher. Her reading got way better. Still not perfect because she does have a reading disability. But I do believe that in person is the way to go. I don't believe that you guys should make your own matrix up. I believe that you should follow what the professionals have put out there. Making up our own matrix is not helping anybody except for you guys creating your own matrix. I believe that washing your hands, wearing a mask, and all the precautions that are in place, it's working. I'm a fireman. I'm on the front lines. I'm doing that right now. I've ran on many people that have had COVID. I take care of them. I get them to the hospital, and I have not gotten COVID. Just like the dentists that are here and everybody else that's here, the precautions that are in place, they're working. But to shut down schools, just to shut down schools because you guys want to shut down schools, and for the people that want online, they should have online. You guys have online options, but to shut schools down and not give our kids the option to go to school is not the right thing to do. I know you guys are trying to do the best you can do, but please, please listen. I was sitting next to her and she struggled with online. Thank you.
Clayton A. Good evening. First and foremost, thank you, Governing Board and Cabinet, for your continued dedication to our students, staff, and families. Second, assuming the audience tonight looks similar to the audience the last time the issue of school closure came up, I request that you look at the audience and their privilege. The parents in front of you come from the highest SES schools in our district. They have the best access to health care, do not live in multi-generational homes, and would not experience COVID and all of its damage the same as the vast majority of our district. Their presence here tonight is evidence of their privilege and should not be considered to represent the opinions of the district as a whole. Again, thank you for your support of our students and staff.
The next card I have is Renee Miller.
Good evening. I implore you to assess ways to maintain in-person learning or provide additional support to those children who are not able to learn effectively in a remote model. Your own survey of certified educators said that 55% disagree that students can learn effectively through PV Connect. I come to you as a parent of a 7-year-old with an IEP and a specific learning disability and an OHI of ADHD. She is a second grader, and despite her cognitive ability being on the high side of average, she is reading at a kindergarten level. She is dependent on someone to read all of her material to her in order to do her grade level work, and cannot navigate through her various Google Classrooms and websites on her own. Despite our very best efforts, remote learning at home is not effective. She made great strides during the last 6 weeks of in-person learning, and we hate to see the wind taken out of her sails, especially in these formative years. Will the on-site support offered during remote learning follow the Arizona Department of Education guidelines? The guidelines include paraprofessional support for distance learning instruction and teacher-led instruction and/or tutoring for a subset of academically at-risk students. But it does not appear that these are part of PVUSD's support model. How will children like my daughter have an appropriate supports in remote model so they do not fall further behind? Thank you.
This one is from Christopher Maddox. This sending of our kids back to online learning will kill lots of students literally and figuratively education-wise. I can't sign on for this. I can't teach real science online. It's not science to watch simulations of experiments and the like. These poor kids will have absolutely no interest in science when you finally decide to end this silliness. I cannot understand the reasoning for an across-the-board closure of schools. It would be better served to the community to pick and choose which keep bringing kids and which go to online. I'm at a loss for words to describe the damage this will do to our students. I can see a huge difference between students who are in class and students who chose to stay online. There's literally no comparison between in-person and online learning. I defy you to show me one scientific study that shows online students do better than in-person learners. You will not find it.
The next card is from Tony Pantero.
Good evening, President Greenberg, members of the board,
Dr. Welsh, and members of the cabinet. I'm here as a teacher. I've been here since 1978, teaching in the district continually, lived here. My children went to school here, my grandchildren, etc. And I've always been proud to be part of this district because they put education first, learning first. But the one thing I love about the board, especially this board, is that you know that there's one thing better than education, that's life, being alive. I have a colleague whose father went into the hospital Monday, diagnosed with COVID. He died Wednesday. Not this week, but previously. That's how quick it went. And she's a colleague of mine. Sure, students don't get this. They're not the ones that are getting it, but grandparents, parents, they do get this disease and they die from it. I don't know what you're going to do. I just know I trust your decision that you're going to put life first and the needs of everyone first. And I thank you for that. Thank you very much.
This is from Nicole Hawksworth. Dear Superintendent Welsh and Governing Board, even though numbers are up in the community, the schools have not driven outbreaks of serious illness, and the value and importance of the education and mental health of our young people needs to be prioritized. As a medical doctor and a mother, I implore you to look at schools on their own merit. My 7-year-old son is in 1st grade at Sonoran Sky Elementary. His school has done an exemplary job with mitigating risk. The principals, teachers, students, and parents all passionately want to stay in-person learning because young students are not as successful in a virtual setting. Shutting down a school that is doing it right and mitigating risk sends the wrong message and does not serve to the lower numbers of COVID in our community, especially given that restaurants, nightclubs, bars, and gyms remain open. Shutting down our schools will jeopardize our students' mental health, social welfare, self-esteem, ability to concentrate and learn, and will serve to increase anxiety and depression. Many do not have a safe or quiet area to even do online learning. If a school has 0 to 1 case, and schools should not be shut down. But instead, the appropriate step, if they are cohorting, would be to send the class home for 2 weeks, not the entire school or district. Please do not punish our children, teachers, and parents if we are facing these challenges successfully. If schools are still closed, then please reopen schools with as much zeal and enthusiasm as you shut them down. A 1-week notice only.
The next card is Seth Pruitt.
Good evening. I have 2 children at Sonoran Sky. I'm asking you to change your closure decision because we're learning that closure is a mistake. So just this month, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, ranked 2nd in the nation, changed its guidance away from using COVID incidents and COVID test positivity metrics because we've learned this fall that the robust masking and distancing measures are working. They advise instead that we pay attention to whether or not the schools are amplifying the community spread that's already there. We have seen that it's not so far, but we know that the costs are high. People have been talking about that. What we know is that the incidence of suicide and depression and toxic stress is up. We know that we're creating achievement gaps that will have long-term effects. My PhD is in economics, so I follow macroeconomic research. And recent studies are estimating that the achievement gaps in place now will lower our children's lifetime income by several $1 trillion. The closures that have already happened. I encourage you to not continue the closures. The costs of closures are high. The benefits of closures are low. I ask you to please keep our children in school. Thank you.
From Kyla Lawrence. As a functional autism teacher, I am sharing my concerns with continuing in-person learning. I am very concerned with the safety and health of my students and staff members. I feel that there needs to be a limit for when our students need to be switching to distance learning. The number for COVID are increasing, and it seems very unsafe to keep them at school. Since there are such few teachers that are having to continue teaching in person, what is going to happen when a teacher falls ill or has symptoms and has to quarantine? There are not enough subs or staff to take over the classroom, and it is not legal to have the paraprofessionals to act as substitutes in these types of situations. I am hoping that you are able to make better decisions to help protect our staff and the most vulnerable group of students.
The next card here is from Eric Salstrand.
Good evening. I have two daughters, 4th and 6th grade at Wildfire Elementary. My 9-year-old, she'll be perfectly fine. She likes being home. Our 6th grader, on the other hand, will not. My younger daughter feels great when her big sister is around her. But my 6th grader has suffered greatly. Before going back to school, we reached out to the school for some help. They told us to reach out to our pediatrician, who told us that they were full and no longer seeing any more kids. So at that point, we felt a little bit left alone, and we took it upon ourselves to work as best we can with her. I'm not equipped for that, and it's a direct result of not being in class. There are plenty of news anchors who get paid multi-millions of dollars a year to spread fear. They do a great job. I think if we look at the numbers, we can see that schools do not spread this virus and our kids are perfectly safe there. Schools should be the model of what other businesses respond to. They should look at the schools and the lack of spread and say they're doing it right. They're masking, they're sanitizing, they're being smart. Instead, we are the one who's doing the best job, in my opinion, and we are closing. That's sending the wrong message. It's saying bars, restaurants, you go ahead and do whatever you want to do. We'll just put our kids away. That's not the right place for them. I know that there are people who are afraid, and I've sent emails before that PV Connect is a fantastic option for them. You've done a great job accommodating for the people who are scared to be in class and can't accommodate their children at home. I just ask that you make the same accommodations for the people who need their children in school and who think it's the best place for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
From Lori Scott, the PV Governing Board's goal is the best education and experience for a child's years in school. COVID-19 has challenged this process and opinions are broad. School closures that started in March may have been warranted due to the uncertainty of COVID-19. Now there is more data, CDC recommendations, and just stated today with emphasis from the White House COVID task force showing that schools need to stay open because the spread is not occurring inside its walls. Our kids are falling behind on their education. K2 is drastically behind on reading level expectations. My 1st grade child is one of those students, and that angers me. Closures also crushes the mental stability of our young children. Suicide rates locally and nationally are rising rapidly. Fear should not blind the board to make decisions. The board needs to know that the safety measures are working and kids need to continue in-person school. Lastly, there should only be 2 models with in-person or PV online.
The next card is from Marcy Schumann.
Good evening. I have 2 boys at Desert Trails Elementary School, and I'm here to advocate for them since they cannot advocate for themselves. I also have a daughter at Scottsdale Prep, which is a Great Heart Schools. First, education is essential. Schools should be the last essential business closed, not the first. Board Member Case, I appreciate your comments. If I actually heard those comments more from the leadership at my school and the superintendent, I would likely not be here speaking. 2, my 81-year-old mom lives with me. I am a multi-generation home. She is obese. She has health issues with her heart. But we do the precautions to protect her. She would hate and does hate that her grandchildren have to suffer because of her health and age. 3, Desert Trails has only 2 COVID cases for in-person learners. This is hardly used as evidence to close schools for an indefinite closure. In fact, it shows the opposite, that transmission rates are low in elementary schools. Next, the board has already shown a propensity to create different guidelines for Maricopa County. So use that propensity to adopt guidelines based on the COVID data reported in schools, and then treat schools individually. So not all schools have to be shut down at once. And obviously from comments today, there's a difference between elementary school students and high school students. I wanted to thank Mrs. Kasha, Mrs. Cox, and Mrs. Fargo for teaching my boys at Desert Trails. They are wonderful. Thank you.
From Christy Johnstone, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all of our teachers, support staff, administrators, district personnel, and governing board members for the work you are doing, with an extra special thank you to everyone at Shadow Mountain High School. This is a situation where there are no easy answers or decisions. Please know that you are appreciated. Thank you.
The next card is from Kyle Wiki. Thank you.
As everyone is aware, we are going back to virtual learning next week. I understand the Maricopa County metrics the PV district is currently using, but I am asking the board to narrow its focus on our PV schools' specific data, which is more relevant for us. The district's school-specific COVID dashboard data through Tuesday, 11/15, shows this. New confirmed cases per 100,000 in elementary schools, 4. 22 of our 28 elementary schools, or 79%, have 0 new cases. Think about that. 79% of our elementary schools do not have a single case of COVID, yet we're closing all of them. That doesn't make any sense. New confirmed cases per 100 in middle schools, 2. In high schools, 5. In early learning schools, 0. What this data clearly indicates is that even when COVID spread in the community is high, 164 cases per 100,000 as of today's update, the virus does not seem to spread in schools. Therefore, the risks for students, teachers, staff is substantially lower while physically in a school than anywhere else in the community. And that includes grocery stores, bars, restaurants, whatever. It is undeniable that in-person instruction is essential to these kids' learning, development, and overall physical and mental health. Our neighboring districts in Cave Creek and Deer Valley are staying open for in-person learning. I'm asking the board to please reverse their decision to close and to continue to allow the option for in-person learning for our children based on this new data. And I do appreciate your comments, Mrs. Case. The data shows your 70-year-old teacher is safer in school than at the grocery store. Why would we close the schools? It makes no sense.
Thank you.
Faith Croning. I'm a freshman at Pinnacle, and I'm very disappointed that the school board has decided to close down the PV schools for the rest of the quarter. Online classes limit what students are able to do by a lot. For science classes, students cannot participate in the labs that they normally would. And in electives like PE, culinary arts, photography, and ceramics, students and staff cannot participate in the activities that are a huge part of the class. I've made new friends this year, and putting us online will make it harder to stay in touch with them. I've not heard of anyone who is currently in person say that they are excited to go back online. I've heard a lot of people say that they did not like online and that they are very disappointed and not looking forward to being on a computer every day. I have also heard a lot of people say that they have trouble focusing online and that they feel that it is a disadvantage for them. My teachers have also said that they like having real people in their classrooms. Putting us back online takes away the social time that all students enjoy. Having students at home makes it harder for families to get through the day. Teachers who have little kids will have to help their kids and teach to their students. I hope you choose to continue offering in-person classes.
Yeah, we had a handful of cards that came in towards the end, so I have 3 more cards here. Jonathan Ketchum.
Yeah, those were in yeah.
Oh.
It's not in there, is it?
All right, I also have a card from Alice Mora. Has she come in? Or,
President Greenberg, there is a gentleman by the name of Scott Levy who maybe is in that stack that's sitting here. He said he submitted a card.
no. Are you Jonathan?
I am.
Great.
You ready?
The mic is yours.
Hi. My name is Jonathan Ketchum. I'm a full chaired professor at Arizona State University. I've been a teacher and researcher in health policy there for 15 years. Before that, I was a scholar of health policy research at Berkeley School of Public Health, which I joined after earning my PhD in healthcare in healthcare management from the University of Pennsylvania. So I come to you tonight as a teacher, as an expert on health policy, and as a concerned parent of 2 children in Paradise Valley with a clear, simple message. The school should be open. The decision rests in your hands. I'm calling you to open our schools today, to prioritize our kids, to make decisions based on research, and accommodate any teachers and staff who feel they are particularly at risk. My message is based on a mountain of research. Closing in-person schools greatly harms our children now and for decades to come. Each day adds to these harms, and it doesn't benefit them or teachers or our staff. First, the harms. 37% of our young adults have had thoughts of suicide this year. School closures contribute to this epidemic of depression. Because in-person education is so valuable, it extends life expectancy. School closings and remote teaching through May alone caused more than 5.5 million years of life to be lost by our kids. On top of that is a loss of future earnings by these kids of $15 trillion. Each day schools are closed adds to these devastating totals. Are we stuck? Is that my time? Okay, are we stuck? The answer is no. I come to as a teacher. We're burned out. We're tired. I'm teaching remotely. It's not working for our kids. Each day damages their mental health, their physical health, their education. They're paying huge costs. There's no benefit to the staff, to the kids, to the teachers. There's a pile of research.
Thank you.
Happy to summarize that for you. Thank you.
Stephanie Surratt. I think based on 29 years in the district that the majority of our kids will be fine if the parents make it fine. Kind of like toddlers who fall and look to the parent for what reaction they should do. If the parent shows fear and worry, the kid cries. If the parent smiles and makes like it's no big deal, the kid is fine.
Thank you. The next card is Scott Levy. Is it Levy or Levy? I'm sorry.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Good evening, President Greenberg, Dr. Welsh, members of the board. I work in an area hospital, so I live COVID every day. My message tonight is simple, and if you didn't heard a lot tonight, keep the kids in school. My wife, Hallie, and I moved to this area from the suburbs of Chicago, and we're motivated by the excellent schools here in Paradise Valley School District. We have 2 kids in the district. Our son, Ross, is 6 years old, in the 1st grade at Desert Shadows Elementary School. Ross is in the Communications Development Program, diagnosed as high functioning on the autism spectrum and ADHD. Ross has an IEP that identifies his learning challenges, goals, and accommodations needed to best position Ross and kids like him for success. Requiring Ross and students like him to sit in front of a computer screen for hours at a time is an abomination, a total and complete disaster. Ross gets angry, won't sit for classes, gets easily frustrated, and acts out. This is not learning. Forcing students like Ross to remain in online learning is greatly detrimental to his development. Ross needs and thrives on the individual support provided in person by his teacher, Mrs. Lopez, teacher's aides, and therapists. He's a different kid with structure of the in-person environment and actually advancing toward his goals. Ross and his classmates have adapted to wearing masks, washing hands, keeping social distance. With small class sizes, Ross's program is comparably low risk by the federal CDC guidelines. They're making it work, yet the CD program was not among the special ed programs selected by this board to remain in person. Maintain options for students who can successfully navigate the online learning model. The options proposed by Dr. Welsh that involve going to half days or virtual Wednesdays for all students take away from that crucial instructional time. Ross needs the board to honor the commitments made to him by this board through his IEP. Give all our students and parents a choice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn Jones, I just want to know why we aren't addressing the closure on an individual school or zip code basis. Why is the whole district or nothing? I think that the elementary schools are not seeing the same numbers and should be allowed to continue in-person learning.
The next card I have is from Alicia Mora.
Hi, I'm addressing the board on behalf of my two children, a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old at Fireside Elementary. Most specifically for my 9-year-old, who is an IEP student with ADHD and dyslexia. We came from New York, and we specifically came to Paradise Valley because of the excellent special education program that was here. And we watched her catch up and claw her way through the mud to catch up on 2 years worth of being behind. She just had gotten caught up by the time COVID hit. I watched her lose all of that progress, both from an academic level and then also from an emotional level and self-esteem. A child who had spent 2 years saying that she was stupid and crying when she would go to school was suddenly really happy, and now she's back to crying every day. During the online segment, she said that she couldn't do it. She would bang her head against the table. I've put her now in therapy for depression for a child who is incredibly happy in the light of any teacher or anybody's life who is in her presence. When I had to tell her that she was going back to online, she's been crying for the last couple days and asking me if there's anything else. We've since tried to attempt to open a roll at Cave Creek, which is not something that we really want to do, but I just can't put this child back into that online learning environment. And I just asked the board to keep the school open and to give parents, either IEP student parents or any parents who choose to be in person, that option, with the teachers who also would like to be in person. And I absolutely do respect the parents who want to have their children online and also the teachers. And I just really believe that everybody should have that option. And I ask this board to give everybody that option.
Amy Holmgren, would it be possible for PVOSD to implement a full hybrid schedule to accommodate for social distancing in elementary schools, where half the class does in-person Monday, Tuesday, everyone is remote on Wednesday, and the other half of the class does in-person Thursday, Friday?
The last card I have here is from Rebecca McClowick. I apologize if I mispronounced.
It's okay, it's hard. So I did not prepare a speech. I was not prepared to speak, but I have a kind of unique observational point. I am a nurse at the Children's Hospital. Number one, I used to be a nurse in the district at Palomino, and despite what the person said about privilege, those kids are the kids that need to be in school. Those kids are the kids I watched for bruises. Those kids are the kids I watched because they hadn't eaten in days. Those kids are the kids that I watched because I knew their parents did drugs and maybe didn't show up at home for several days. Those kids need to be in school because a nurse like me needs to watch out for them. Their teachers need to watch out for them. I am also a parent of a child with an IEP, a child who was born addicted to drugs and adopted by myself. She is not receiving online any of her services. She will not ask for help. She will not. She is in 7th grade. She is capable. She just will not. She will not attend the afternoon part. Her needs, I just spoke with her special ed teacher. She needs someone to sit with her and keep her on task. I work at the Children's Hospital. I work 12-hour shifts. I cannot do that. I can't put her in a lunchroom with a duty aide to keep her on task. This is a travesty. This is awful. You guys are for education. If we do not go back to school, those kids' needs need to be met somehow. You are failing them. Thank you.
This is from Elliot Crabtree. Half days will be a good thing for us students because it will give us much more time to do the things that we like to do and perhaps might inspire more kids to stand up and move around instead of sitting at our computers all day. Next one is from Heather Lewis. I am disappointed in the district's decision to close all schools. This is not the right decision, and PV is failing our kids. They deserve an education. My son and daughter thrive inside the classroom. Virtual is not enough, nor is half day enough for my high school student. On 11/5, PV Schools sent an email to parents stating, in our conversations with MCDPH, public health officials say the positive cases they are seeing within the schools are mainly the result of behaviors, activities, and social interactions outside of the school. These outside of school behaviors are not only resulting in increased cases, but are also causing a large number of individuals to quarantine per public health requirements. COVID is not spreading within the schools while students are social distancing, wearing masks, and hand washing. Community spread is coming from extracurricular activities, social gatherings, and other outside activities. I am a healthcare professional, and I am not understanding why schools are closing when adequate precautions are in place and there are not outbreaks within the school due to the lack of precautionary measures. Students need and deserve a proper education. The mental health of my children is also a concern. They are safest at school wearing a mask and social distancing while being among peers. My children learn more and socially benefit for being in a classroom than sitting in their room staring at the computer. Why are we moving these children from a safe school environment and risking their mental health? I am a healthcare professional.
All right, we do have a card from Emily Jensen. Good. We're going to switch up here.
Good evening. I'm a former teacher myself. I used to teach 8th grade and then switched, and now I'm a physician assistant in dermatology. I'm also a parent of a 7th grade student in the district, and I understand the perspective from the teachers and also from the healthcare workers and what's going on and taking care of patients and keeping people safe. And I feel very safe sending my child to school, and I feel that the precautions the school has taken have been very good. And I've been impressed. I've been impressed with the results, and I would like the option to stay in school. I think that tonight was supposed to be discussed about what's going to happen next semester. I was disappointed in the email survey I received about doing half days and then possibly taking Wednesdays off. I don't think that's enough education for the students or for the teachers on that matter to teach them. So I think an in-person option, and if that's too hard with the PV Connect, to do online option where we have just some teachers who teach online and then possibly the other teachers who teach in person. Maybe the older teachers or the more at-risk teachers can do the online option that keeps them safe and then keeps the students safe that can be online. And then, as we've heard here today, there's quite a few parents who are hoping and wanting their kids to be able to go in school, so we could have that option as well. Thank you.
Next one is from A. Ham. I'd like to thank the PV Governing Board for following CDC, state, and county guidelines and preparing for a return to virtual learning with on-site support for the most vulnerable populations of students. This strong leadership is needed amongst the deafening silence of leadership from the governor. Like many, I've heard the complaints, kids are depressed, my kids just play Xbox, learning isn't happening. Those are solvable issues by parents. These complaints seem to come from the same people who refuse to follow health guidance and host parties, attend maskless rallies, and do unregulated club sports. Probably the same parents who break local and state laws by protesting at the private residence of members of the school board. That somehow their entitlement and privilege leads them to the conclusion that they have some enumerated constitutional right to regulate their parental responsibilities to what they call the government schools, while simultaneously not following the government guidance to wear a piece of fabric over their big mouths. Let me be clear, parenting is hard, but the loudest complaints seem to be parents who don't know how or don't want to step up and be parents. Be a parent. The school is not responsible for parenting your kids. Schools are a place for teaching and learning. For centuries, parents have pushed off parental responsibilities onto teachers and schools, and like many other things, this pandemic has unearthed this dirty little secret. Be a parent. You all have smartphones. Search for mental health supports for your kids. There are free resources available. Search out the signs of depression and suicide and take the initiative to be there for your kids. Connect with your kids. Look at them in the eyes.
Okay, I actually have another card we thought was for later, but we'd like to address now Catherine Allen.
Thank you for your time. We hear you. We see that you're trying to do your best, and we appreciate that. I think teachers really are some unsung heroes, at least my children's teachers. I applaud them every day for keeping my children safe and for helping kind of smooth out what was a rough start to this school year. And I don't think I need to hammer in this fact anymore. School is the safest place for our kids. The data shows it. The data also shows that children are suffering when they are not in school. I believe that our teachers should have an option as well. I don't want to force someone to be online or to be in person. We all should have a choice. We are all taxpayers. We are all proponents of educating our children. What's right for my family is going to be different than something for another family. But I need to have a choice in that matter, just as the teacher should have a choice. The dual modality is too challenging for a teacher. I agree. No teacher should be trying to do both. But find teachers who want to be online, find teachers who want to be in person, and let's make this work. Because most of the teachers I've talked to have said they would rather be in person because they see that's where the children are doing their best. I am losing hope. These children are our future, and they deserve more from all of us. I disagree with some of the things read that parents need to not turn over the parenting role to the teacher. I don't expect a teacher to parent my child. That is my job, and I will be the one who does that. But there are children who need an advocate, and that needs to be you. We need your help to rescue these children. They need us. Thank you.
This one's from Megan Carter. I am a teacher at North Canyon High School and mother of children at Pinnacle High and Explorer Middle Schools. First, I'd like to say that I love Paradise Valley Schools and I think it's amazing. With this pandemic situation, I know that everyone is worried about our children. We are worried that children are being left behind academically and socially. I do know that our teachers are working tirelessly to adapt to the situation and give the students the support that they need. I know the students are stressed and tired for working on screens all day and not getting the physical and social time they need. I know that we are all resilient and we will make it through. We will get used to this new lifestyle and change of life norms. But right now we need some support. I want to bring up some areas that I see we need to work on in order for our schools to stay open to those students that need to be in person. First, we need to put pressure on the community to stay safe and let the doors stay open to school. We need to pressure our government to put schools over bars. Second, we need to address lunch at school. The lunch areas are hardly social distance while students have masks off and are sitting on each other and close to each other. I can only keep my students safe while they are in my classroom, but the hallways and lunch areas are filled with contact and masks off. I know that we can keep the students in schools where they need to be, but we need to work on solutions to our school day, and the community needs to put schools first. Ashley McCurry. Good evening, and thank you to your commitment to the success of this district. Although I may not agree with all your decisions, I appreciate your time. I write to you today because my 5- and 6-year-old cannot. Our house has been in harmony again. Our children are in school, building friendships and able to access the education they were obviously craving. They smile more, cry less, and sadly even communicate in their little voices how happy they are to be at school. The schools have done a phenomenal job. They have smiled through frustration and given our children every ounce of their energy to try to catch them up. We are headed in the right direction. Our governor recognizes the importance of this. Our future president has been sure to note it as well. Let teachers teach, let children learn. Schools are not the problem. This isn't my opinion, it's a fact. You had to build guidelines months ago. You were forced to take what you knew and make decisions. What a hard task. We've learned since those initial decisions and adjustments are necessary. Teachers will teach online or in person, not both. It's too much. We need to retain the great staff we have. Families will choose a teacher online or send their children to a teacher on campus, not both. They still have a choice. There is no law or health code preventing you from making this happen. I beg you for the well-being of our children to adapt. The next one is from Heidi Winden. I fully support the plan to shift to online learning at this time. Everyone knew that the case counts would go up when schools reopened, and now we're approaching the number of cases that we had in the summer when the pandemic was out of control. There were over 1 million new cases nationwide in the past 7 days, and 49 out of 50 states are seeing an increase in cases. Our benchmarks are serving their purpose in protecting students and teachers. The biggest concern I have are the upcoming holidays. Many people will visit their relatives out of state, eat Thanksgiving dinner indoors without masks on, and even more families will decide that there's no way they can spend Christmas apart. Think about how many people will celebrate that 2020 is finally over on New Year's Eve. People traveling for the holidays will chip away at any local success we've had with slowing the pandemic, and Arizona is about to be hit as hard as many other states. Major universities are closing from Thanksgiving through January because they understand the immense risk that lies ahead. Parents should be grateful for the time we were able to reopen and understand that it simply wasn't sustainable at this time.
Sophia Mirza, I want half days to be permanent. Kara Nakamura. You now know the consequences of bowing to a loud minority and changing the metrics to open. Before you reopen the district to in-person learning again, please reflect and learn from the mistake of opening too soon. Our community staff and children can't keep flip-flopping back and forth. Please hold the line and do not bend again. You know what happens when we open too soon. The current metrics have proven to be unsafe. We should hold to our original metrics to keep our staff, their families, and students safe. We need to stay online until we have a very firm handle on the virus. We should remain online only for the remainder of second quarter and continue into third quarter. Towards the end of January, reevaluate based on scientific experts. You need to do what is right for our entire community, not just the loud minority. Listen to the scientific experts instead of political pressure. We should stay online until we can safely be in person only. It is completely unfair and taking advantage of the teachers to force them to teach two different ways at the same time. No one benefits when there is PV Connect and in-person teaching at the same time. It is completely ineffective and is draining the teachers emotionally and mentally. We will lose many teachers we can't afford to lose if you reopen too soon or force them to teach in two different ways at the same time. Please make the decisions for our staff, their families, and students to remain safe. They are tough decisions to remain closed, but it's the right thing to do to keep our community safe. Ralph Carnesi. Please don't mistake the lack of my presence at the board meeting as a sign of acceptance of the status quo. I'm very concerned about social distancing and for the safety of others. I cannot impress on you the impossible task you have laid at our feet as to online and in-person teaching at the same time. It is a Herculean task that one mere person cannot accomplish with success. I invite any of the board or district personnel to come into our schools and see for themselves firsthand what it is like to do both. As for the middle high schools, we implore you to look at the modified schedule and adopt it. Our students suffered burnout and fatigue being online for so long during the first virtual learning session. This modified schedule would allow our students ample time to do work, be able to meet the teachers if need be for help on any subject, and have an adequate break in the day to combat screen fatigue. As a district, we acknowledge this concept of screen fatigue with no tech weekends, so this should be a natural acceptance of a modified schedule for middle and high school. Thank you. Leah Knably. As a mother and teacher in Paradise Valley, I was not thrilled when the governing board changed the metrics needed to close our schools from yellow to red, but I understand this was made to try to keep schools open and students learning in the best possible environment. I also understood the change matched the updated guidance of our county and state. I want to start by thanking you for using science rather than emotions to guide your decisions. As elected volunteers, you have the ability to set direction for our district. By establishing and committing to using metrics from the county and the state, we are ensuring the students are in schools when it is safe for them to be there and at home when there is a high risk of community spread. I know you will receive emails from parents and others upset that you are closing schools. We are not closing schools because we want to. We're closing schools because it is the best decision to keep our families in the PV community as safe as possible. We know this because we teach and follow science. Thank you for committing to using the metrics in science. Please continue to follow the established guidelines in the PV reopening plan. Jeff Fahey. Dear PVUSD Board and Superintendent Welsh, what we have here is a failure of leadership. It appears as if you are listening to the loudest voices in the room, not the smartest. Last time you had parents screaming at you, so you opened the doors and doubled the workload of your employees without giving them the additional resources they needed. Now the PVEA has not subtly backed you into a corner, so you decided to shut the doors and are proposing less teaching when the doors open again in the future. Capitulating to the loudest voices is not leading, it is following. I expect better of you. At your recent study session, it was suggested that due to the dual modality, there is a need to get as much as possible off teachers' plates. Absurdly, the one thing you came up with was to take teaching off their plates. I am a parent and with no background in education, and even I knew that dual modality could not work without additional resources. The fact that you didn't know this in advance constitutes negligence on your part. Governor Ducey could not have been more clear yesterday when he said that parents should have the option of in-person learning for their children. He is now the loudest voice in the room, and I beg you to listen to him. I know that there are factions within the board itself, within parents groups, and within the PVEA that expect you to follow through on the promise to shut everything down. However, nothing these days is stable, and everything is constantly changing. This, coupled with the governor's words yesterday, should give you enough political cover to appease
Nicole Woolsey. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to say I understand that the task at hand is extremely emotional and trying. Thank you for all your hard work. The teachers have been exceptional in our school at Desert Shadows Elementary. I truly feel like the kids are doing an amazing job at school. Going forward, I truly hope you consider that the schools can go back, stay in school. The transmission isn't coming from inside the schools, meaning students, teachers, and parents are being safe outside and inside of school. Maybe we need to adopt a case by case in each school. If there is greater transmission happening in one school, then they need to pause for a couple weeks. I know that there is no clear answer, but I know that our kids need to be in school. Thank you. Jay Ford. Please keep elementary schools open unless there are a specific number of positive cases reported within the school itself. These kids, especially K through 3, need in-person learning and social contact. Scottsdale School District is remaining open with some within our same zip codes and only choosing if the cases rise to a certain level within the school. Thank you for your honest consideration. Alexandra Wani. Thank you for taking the time to listen to students like me who have been on PV Connect since school started this year. I'm a 7th grader at Desert Shadows Middle School, and my whole middle school experience has been online so far. Being on the computer for 6 hours, 5 days a week has been hard. All of my teachers have been doing a great job trying to keep us all engaged in class, but it is impossible to stay focused for so many hours at a time. When I saw the new schedule change my principal sent me this week, I was relieved because I would no longer have to be glued to the screen, sitting at my computer where even though I am only 12 years old, I have regular headaches and neck and back pain. I now feel hopeful that this change will allow me to learn more and look forward to learning because I'll be able to do my assignments and independent work outside or at another location other than at my desk in my room, where I now spend 30 hours a week by myself. Thank you, PV, for recognizing that schools online should be different than school in person, especially during COVID-19. Erin Russell. I am a pharmacist and a mother of a child at Sandpiper Elementary who strongly supports full-time in-person learning. I have 3 points. 1, school is my daughter's only chance for social interaction with other children. Her behavior, happiness, and sense of self have drastically improved since returning to in-person learning. 2, Sandpiper has 0 cases recorded. 3, this board has a duty to put our children and community first, and you are not doing so. It is academically and socially irresponsible of you to remove in-person learning for an entire district whose metrics do not match the MCDPH closure recommendations, especially for young learners. Furthermore, you are closing a school that has seen 0 cases. This is an irresponsible use of board power and a misrepresentation of the position of district families. Shame on you. Do not move away from in-person learning prematurely. Let the metrics speak for themselves. Michelle Gabbert. I want to thank the governing board for their solid decision making and for prioritizing the health and well-being of our valued educators and our children. As a practicing physician in the Valley, we have unfortunately seen a surge in the number of COVID admissions to our hospitals. We need to continue to support your efforts and decision making using the existing metrics that are in place. There are obviously some unhappy parents with the decision to return to virtual teaching, and there are a number of petitions and rallies to protest the governing board's decisions. Just know that these parents represent the minority of individuals protesting, and that the majority of parents, including healthcare providers, support the decisions of the board, and we believe you are making the best decisions for the right reasons. We will continue to stand behind the PV board.
Thank you. I think that is the 90-minute time period that we have set for call to the public. So we appreciate everybody who provided comments in person and online. Since it's been a while, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. Just everybody can get up, walk around, use the restroom as needed. Okay, that's been about 5 minutes, so we're gonna return to the agenda. Okay, next on the agenda, if everybody who wants to take a seat has done so, is superintendent's comments.
Thank you, President Greenberg. I have just a few comments this evening, and then, of course, I have more that we'll talk about under my COVID-19 update later on the agenda. Just a few things I would like to highlight. This week is American Education Week, which celebrates public education and honors all of those who make a difference in ensuring that every child receives a quality education. And yesterday was Education Support Professionals Day, and Friday is Substitute Educators Day. So I'd like to recognize the contributions that our ESP employees and our substitute teachers do in our day, do in our district every day. Thank you, and especially in these difficult times. I would also like to congratulate our Marketing and Communications Department, which won several 2020 Aspiration Awards in the categories of photography, special purpose publications, and videos. These awards attest to the outstanding work that this small but mighty team does. Thank you. And finally, ASPAA, which is the Arizona School Personnel Administrators Association, promotes and advances public education in Arizona through cooperative efforts of public school administrators within the state of Arizona who have a primary professional responsibility administering human resources management programs involving school employees. And I am pleased to announce that our very own Dr. Sean Holmes, Director of Human Resources for Certified, was named the ASPAA Administrator of the Year for 2020 at the annual conference yesterday. And his leadership within the organization has made a positive impact on human resource professionals across the state. Congratulations, Dr. Holmes. Somewhere out in cyberspace. And that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Welsh. Next on the agenda, our first item for approval is second read for consideration approval of proposed new courses and revisions for the 2021-22 high school course catalog. Dr. Corson.
Good evening, President Greenberg, members of the board, Dr. Welsh, cabinet and guests. Tonight is the second reading of our high school course recommendation additions and revisions for the 21-22 school year, and we are requesting approval from you this evening.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Case, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Does anybody have any questions, comments for Dr. Corson? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is ratification of vouchers. Mrs. Case, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
If there is no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Greenberg, I abstain.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bacon. The motion passes. And last on the agenda of items for approval is acceptance of gifts and donations. As always, we so very much appreciate all of our generous donors. I'd like to note a few here. At Horizon High School, the Thunderbirds Foundation gave $1,000 each for boys and girls golf. At North Canyon High School, John Thomas Clark and Jessica Core Clark donated $4,000 for the AVID program. And James E. Clark and Mary L. Clark donated $5,000 for the AVID program. And at Pinnacle High School, Margaret and Jim Massey donated a Conover Cable Cherrywood baby grand piano worth $8,000 to the band program. Patriots Youth Lacrosse Organization, DBA Pinnacle Boys Lacrosse, donated $2,000 for the winter spring turf for freshman football field. And the Pinnacle Girls Lacrosse donated $2,000 for the winter spring turf for freshman football field. Again, thank you to all of our donors. And Mrs. Case, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next on our agenda are items for discussion, and first up is consideration of revisions to various governing board policies, and I will turn it over to Mr. Long.
Good evening, President Greenberg, Governing Board members, Superintendent Welsh Cabinet, and the PVUSD community. Tonight is the first reading consideration of acceptance of Governing Board Policy ACAA Title IX Sexual Harassment. As the district's Title IX coordinator, I am working closely with Dr. Bales, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, as implementation of this new policy could easily cross over into other areas of human resources. For those that may be unaware, Title IX is a federal civil rights law that was passed as part of the Education Amendments of 1972 that mandated that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Prior to May 6, 2020, Title IX did not refer to sexual harassment. The regulations now define sexual harassment and establishes detailed procedures for how school districts subject to Title IX must respond to allegations of harassment. The adoption of this policy will allow PVUSD to become compliant with current federal law. I remind you, this is the first reading, and we'll bring this back to you in December, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Does any member of the board have any questions? That was pretty easy. We look forward to the return in December. And next on the agenda is our COVID-19 update.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Just some updates regarding COVID-19. So last Thursday, the rate of cases for COVID-19 within our PV schools community reached 106 cases per 100,000, exceeding the recommended limit established by the Arizona Department of Health Services. In alignment with our adopted health criteria and in consultation with the Maricopa County Department of Public Health, last Thursday we communicated to families that we had hit our red light, signaling a return to online learning in the interest of public safety due to the level of community spread. And for all of us in PV, we recognize that learning in person is the best option for most students. I think I can safely speak for all of our employees in that, more than anything, we want to be able to continue teaching our students in person. It is a heart-wrenching decision to have to make to return to online learning again. Additionally, I strongly hope and urge that our families please celebrate the holidays safely, limit large gatherings, wear a mask in public, maintain social distancing. It's working together that we can stop the spread of COVID-19 that is currently growing exponentially within our community. And while there is hope on the horizon in terms of a vaccine, wide availability of this cure is likely still months away. We need to remain diligent so we can return back to normal as much as possible. Just to clarify, and I know we heard this in some of the comments this evening, according to the most recent guidance from the Arizona Department of Health Services, and I quote, if a county or district has one benchmark in the red category for 2 or more weeks, even if different benchmarks, schools should consult with their local health department to determine whether to prepare to transition back to virtual learning with on-site support services. With today's data, we went from 106 cases per 100,000 persons to 164 cases per 100,000 persons, and we are officially in the red. Our percent positivity also increased from 7.12% to 7.65%. All of our neighboring districts are also above 100 cases per 100,000 at this time. Scottsdale, Deer Valley, Glendale Union High School, Peoria, and Dysart are all also in the red. We've received feedback from medical experts with whom we've been working with. I'd like to share one comment we received from Dr. Lau, who is a member of our COVID-19 response team. She says, and I quote, "What we know for sure is that when people congregate inside and the rate of COVID-19 in a community is above a certain criteria, 10% positivity and 100 cases per 100 population, there is a high amount of risk of transmission, risk of infection. I tell people to think of it like a forest fire. If you can see the embers burning in your surroundings, it's time to leave, not wait for a full-fledged fire to break out right when you're standing there before you take some action. Science supports the shutdown of in-person learning entirely when either of the two criteria adopted by the board occur. Moving forward, I'd like to talk about some of our operations we are working on to support students as we transition to online learning. Nutrition is prepared to resume grab-and-go meal services beginning Monday next week at selected sites based upon previous demand. There will also be meals available for students attending on-campus, on-site support, or targeted support. Special education is communicating to staff and families to provide targeted support for students beginning next Monday whose IEP needs cannot be met in a virtual environment. These programs match those that were in person last August. Our instructional technology team has continued to work with schools to ensure that students have access to devices and hotspots as needed in preparation for returning to online learning next week. Many students kept the hotspots that were assigned to them in the fall and can continue to use them. And IT will continue to use the PV Assist website and increase the number of IT staff members working the hotline once we pivot. Schools have communicated to families regarding on-site support opportunities beginning Monday. We will be offering on-site support at each individual school. Space at each site is limited based on staffing and health guidelines regarding social distancing. And we will be prioritizing those who are receiving special education or English language services, children in foster care or experiencing homelessness, children with a 504 plan, and those parents or guardians who are first responders. I'd also like to share, and this is just recent today, the Arizona Interscholastic Association Executive Board in a special meeting passed a motion to start winter sports competition in January. It was recommended by the AIA to postpone the start of winter sports season because of the surging coronavirus infections in Arizona. January 5th will be the first permissible day of competition with a mandatory time frame of at least 14 days of practice prior to first competition, according to the AIA. And with the return to online learning and based upon feedback from parents, principals, and teachers, we also made revisions to the PV Connect schedule for middle and high school students for the remainder of this first semester. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Long. Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually, I don't mean to interrupt, but we do have 2 comment cards on on our COVID update, and then I just want to, if any member of the board has any comments they want to make as well. Kia Karada. Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. I'm here as a parent of 3 students in the PV schools, and I'm here tonight to say thank you. Thank you for prioritizing the health and safety of the thousands of students in our district, and for recognizing that it is time to return to online instruction and offer on-site support. Thank you for valuing your employees and taking steps to make sure they are all still here with us when the pandemic is over. Not all school districts have done that, and you're being applauded from teachers outside of PV. Thank you for PV Connect. My 3 kids have remained on PV Connect even as schools reopened. They have been able to stay in the Spanish immersion program at Sandpiper and the engineering academy at Desert Shadows. Those courses are not offered on PV Online, and they would have to give up participation in those programs. So many students have benefited from PV Connect, but I know it has not been easy for the teachers. So I also want to thank the teachers that have put in countless hours this semester to teach all of their students. PV has amazing teachers and staff. And once again, they have risen to the challenge of meeting the needs of their students, no matter what obstacles they're presented with. Thank you for sticking to the metrics that you have set and returning to online learning when the cases in our community became too high for our schools to safely remain open. Thank you for following the science and listening to the doctors and medical professionals that have offered their expertise this last few months. Some people are choosing not to believe the data in front of their eyes. It is much easier to deny the hardships that we are all going to face than to address them head on and make the hard decisions. The numbers are rising faster every day, and some PV zip codes had dramatic increases in their cases per 100,000 this past week. So thank you for your leadership when others have failed. The lack of action from the governor and state officials has created a vacuum that school districts have been asked to fill across the state. You have been tasked with overseeing not only the education of 30,000 students, but also having to keep them healthy and safe during a pandemic. There are no easy answers, but I appreciate your courage in making these difficult decisions.
Thank you. Trevor Nelson.
Good evening.
Today, the executive director of Maricopa County Public Health noted that over 800 sports teams will be coming to the Valley in the next 2 weeks. Their families will be here, and they're flying and driving into a rising community spread, which is endangering not only them, but us in this location, plus all the families and people that they're going to take it back to when they leave, which is really dangerous. The latest research shows that the long-term effects of exposure to COVID-19 are really, really bad, and you don't want them, especially in kids. So I want to show you guys some maps. You've probably seen these. This was 11/5. Here's the next week. And this is the Maricopa County board. You notice the green goes away and the red gets worse. Yeah, that's not a good sign. That's why we're closing schools. Percentage, this is really fascinating. If you do a week over week percentage change, the percentage of school districts that have seen an increase in their COVID rates, the elementary school districts have gone up 79%. The high schools have gone up 100%, and the unified districts like us have gone up 86%. That's the community rate within the zip codes in those districts. Today is also, you might have heard that our case count today was 4,123. Good thing it wasn't 41,000. 4,123. That cracked the top 5 of highest case in a single day in Arizona. We haven't had this since the summer. The number 1 was back in July 1st, then 3rd, then 14th, and the 10th. You guys remember what happened in the summer? Here's a graph to remind you of what happened over the summer. Now, this was without schools being open because it was July. The bars and restaurants and everything else were open, and then the governor had to shut those down so that we could try to get the spread under control. So this is the rolling 7-day average. We had a high day today, but over the last 7 days we haven't, but we're here, just so you guys can reference that. So I just have to tell, I heard a lot of people complain, and it's hard. I have 4 kids at home. We're on PV Connect, and we absolutely love our teachers. We're staying in PV Connect because my father's getting cancer treatment, so we have to stay protected. So actually being here is really dangerous, but I'll do what I can. The reason we're closing schools is not to punish kids. It's to keep everyone safe in the community. And if the community would do their part to keep everyone safe, we wouldn't have to close schools. That's actually a fact in research. And if parents would stop holding winter formals like this one that's advertised online, maybe we could keep schools open. Just saying. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Again, wrapping up my COVID-19 update with that return to online learning, and based on feedback from parents, principals, and teachers, we did make some revisions to the PV Connect schedule for middle and high school students for the remainder of the semester. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Long just to provide some additional details regarding that shift.
Thank you. Good evening, President Greenberg, governing board members, Superintendent Welsh, Cabinet, and the PVUSD community. This evening, I wanted to share some thoughts behind the change in the secondary schedule for a PV Connect when students return to a virtual setting on Monday. This past summer, I had the opportunity to work with a number of stakeholders regarding how long each period should be at the secondary level. It was a robust discussion, as many of us had difficulty trying to decide how long is too long before we would get diminishing returns on student engagement and focus. As you are aware, secondary groups of folks getting together there's never a lack of opinions, but we did reach a consensus, and that's how we developed the original schedule that we implemented at the beginning of the school year. But now we've lived through a period of time with that implementation. What have we learned? For some students, the schedule has not been an issue. They sign in every period, they're engaged, they receive their direct instruction, and they work independently. That group would say, don't change the schedule. However, for a large number of students, that has not been a positive experience. It's been a struggle emotionally and physically to stay connected for as much as 50 minutes at the high school level for each class period. They virtually show up to class, but eventually they disengage. And when students disengage, the learning stops. What I've heard from a number of secondary school leaders and teachers is increasing student learning is impossible when there's no student engagement. Many parents have consistently responded that there is too much screen time. Screen fatigue is a factor, not only in just physically but mentally when students have to be connected and intense for a long period of time. I received a number of communications this week. Our students are online anyway. They're on their phones. Academic time is much more intense focused online than texting with friends or socializing or playing a video game when there's adrenaline rushes. Now, when algebra and English can cause those adrenaline rushes, we can have a different conversation. Just a few weeks ago, we had a secondary work team get together. The primary focus of that work team was to develop or discuss what the dual modality, eliminating dual modality, or what could happen at the secondary level to make that happen. That was the primary focus. However, we couldn't avoid the conversation centered around regarding the amount of time students were spending online. Many felt that students were emotionally struggling, and academically, we were getting diminishing returns. The number of students who are not passing, for example, this quarter compared to first quarter pre-COVID is almost double in many situations. We've now experienced this model, and we are looking to make some changes to address the major concerns of more time online and the disengagement of students. Some students need more teacher assistance and tutoring in small groups than what is provided for in the current PV Connect model. This recommendation or proposal that was put forward was to compress the time for each period to allow teachers and students the flexibility to work independently without having to be signed on the entire day. Although students would receive direct instruction for approximately 35 minutes each period, the expectation is that the work does not stop in the afternoon. That is when independent practice occurs, homework occurs, students can be invited into small groups, students can also seek individual attention from teachers and instruction, and individualized instruction. Our teachers are professionals. They know their contracted day and will utilize the afternoon to reach those struggling students who we believe are not receiving what they need in the current model. We have learned from the first quarter that we don't need 10 minutes passing between online periods. In addition, the scheduled lunch also added to that time. For example, and I know Mr. Clancy is out there, he analyzed his schedule. So there's 65 less instructional minutes compared to what students would have received the first quarter that we were virtual and all online. However, some of that time is made up for those students working in small groups and needing the individualized attention, and some principals scheduling makeup sessions and so forth with teachers so that students can fill in those gaps and holes that they've had. Secondary teachers and school leaders are wanting to try something different. We know that there's only about, I know it's 17 or 18 days of instruction left before the end of the semester. We would like to try this. They will be the first to come forward and say, this is not working if this implementation fails. But we would like to try something different to see that if we can get more student engagement and students to fill in those gaps and holes that they've been missing. I understand this is not a popular proposal for some. I understand this is an extremely popular proposal for others. In these difficult times, it's tough to make decisions that are divisive. However, at the secondary level, our school leaders and teachers strongly feel that they can better support students in this adjusted model. Be happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. That concludes my comments on COVID-19 as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions on either topic there.
Well, was that COVID-19 or was that this? I couldn't understand. But
That's a part of the COVID-19 update, Dr. Skidmore.
oh, okay.
The revision to the instructional models is about the dual modality.
Correct. Yeah, I apologize. I think it was maybe just because we had the public speakers in between there that made it a little confusing.
There was a comment by a teacher who wrote to us about this, and she was afraid there wouldn't be enough educational time and that they needed more minutes, not less. how do you get kids to show up in the afternoon when they think school's over at, I don't know, 11:30 or whatever it is? How do you get kids to come back? That's my biggest concern with this. I understand the small group ideas. There could be some real benefit to that, and teachers reaching out to students otherwise. But how do you get them to come back?
It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of messaging. And if they don't come back, then we won't be able to do this. They will not be able to continue. It's going to be essential that there's lots of communication between teachers and students and parents to ensure that those students who need to come back for that small group instruction or individualized attention, they're going to have to show up.
Well, they could get a part-time job in the afternoon and they're not going to come back. I mean, and the parents would support them in that. And I know you're trying this out for this amount of time. I hear that. That's my biggest concern. I mean, is there some kind of attendance that goes with it, that they have to check in, show that they wrote their paper, that they were assigned during their short time, take a picture of it, send it in, whatever? I mean, is there some kind of accountability? That's my biggest thing, is the accountability.
I would say that some of that accountability will come in the independent work that is assigned to them during their direct instruction time that will still be due the next day. It will still be the same as if they were in PV Connects for 50 more minutes. There's still going to be assignments that has to be turned in. Now, if students get that done after their work day, so be it, but there will be some flexibility with that.
Before we leave COVID-19, I have some other comments, but Julie has a comment, I know.
I think, I just wonder if there's some sort of compromise here, where teachers who are concerned that they don't have enough time, we can give them an extra 5 minutes a period or whatever that looks like. I mean, I think understanding that our school day at those levels is a lot of that time is taken by lunch and passing period. So we have to pull that out of that hour count for in-person. So I just wonder if there's some way we can reduce the screen time, because we are hearing from parents that that's an issue, and we're hearing it from students that it's an issue, and we're hearing it from all of us who work on a computer that it's an issue. So I just wonder if we can somewhere reach a balance between what parents who are really worried about this want and the concerns, the rightful concerns of our very talented administrators at the middle and high school level, and the teachers there as well. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment too. I happen to be talking to a friend of mine who happens to be a special ed teacher in our district, and the shortened time periods were a great concern because of the amount of time is required to get her students, up and running basically. And, the shortened period just will be incredibly difficult. So I would echo what Mrs. Bacon said. If we can provide some flexibility, if our administrators can work with the teachers and see where, and I don't know, given the fact that, when you change a period, you change a period. So I'm not totally sure how that works. Or rather than make it 5 days a week, does it become perhaps, 2 days? I don't know. I'm just, again, I trust our administrators when they tell us that this is the model they feel will work best in secondary. I am concerned, though, that with this switch that we are making from in-person to online, that this is yet one more layer on that. And I just want us to be cognizant of that. And it, instead of saying, well, the better, is there some process that will be in place so that we know that that extra time is being utilized academically?
I will work closely with our school leaders and their teachers to ensure that we're tracking that so that if students are not, let's say, coming back for the afternoon after these 17 days, if it doesn't work now, we will certainly increase that time back to our original PV Connect schedule, which was built by consensus, and it was the difference between what a full period would be versus the schedule that we would try to implement right now. So that was the middle ground at that point, and now that we've lived with a little bit, we're just tweaking it some more, and if that doesn't work, we'll go back to our old schedule, certainly.
Mrs. Case, did you, Dr. Skidmore?
Mr. Long, there's a real easy way to solve that.
I'm scared to ask.
Class happens. You know, regular class happens in the afternoon. You have to be online in the morning. And so that means you don't have to get out of bed. You can do your group work or work on your project. But when it comes time to be accountable, you have to show up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or noon carrying the paperwork to prove you did it. Makes a lot more sense than 7 o'clock in the morning to me.
Dr. Skidmore, could you clarify on that? I just want to make sure I understand too.
What? You flip the schedule. Yeah. That's all you do. You send the kids to school in the afternoon and keep them home in the morning, the high school kids.
You always said to think out of the box. Now that's out of the box. That might be something that we could look at.
Well, we've known for 100 years that high school kids aren't with it in the morning. And yet we call them to school at 7 o'clock and we say, okay, today we're going to learn calculus at 7 a.m., and everybody's sitting in the back of the room half asleep. Is that right, Mrs. C? Right? Yeah, that's right. Right. And Dr. Benecton knows that real well, too. Well, he's still at the back of the room falling asleep.
Mrs. Maturi?
I do appreciate that you've taken the time that during a normal class period where a teacher would have direct instruction time leading into individual practice time and being able to kind of segment that so that all the class instruction can be happened in a compressed period and allow for the individual work time to be in a separate time. So I understand that we're not, while the class times seem drastically reduced, that the direct instruction time may not be affected by this model. So I appreciate trying to take all of those 10 minutes here, at the end of each class and lumping them all together to allow a student to have a full, half an hour to work on that, because the 10 minutes really isn't enough for them to get much done in between classes. So I do appreciate the concept of the compressed schedule to allow for that to happen at different times.
Mrs. Case?
It wasn't that long ago, daughter's 21, that she was in class writing in the block schedule for the entire time and would get hand cramps trying to catch up with 8 push notes. I mean, I know that. And so how do you take an 8 push class and condense the minutes when those teachers need all of those minutes to finish a subject? That's a huge concern of mine. Every class is so different. And if you shorten one class, then it seems like a scheduling nightmare is what I'm trying to say. I understand the concept, but literally there are some, like at PV High School, the classes end in December and you have to get all of that material covered and get ready for AP tests right then. You don't have another choice. That's it.
I didn't say it was going to be easy. This is difficult because it's really addressing the fact that online education should not look like what's happening in an in-person classroom. So it does take a lot of rethinking on how the subject matter will be covered in terms of direct instruction, and work happens outside of those 35 minutes, whether it's in the afternoon with small groups of students or whether it's a student working independently. And the teachers and the admin are charged with that specific task of what does that look like. And then Mr. Dennis is here, and I know he's already working with his teachers on what that would look like in terms of his periods would be more than the 35 minutes because it's double because they're blocked. But the other principals, we have discussed that, and that's always a concern, whether it's going to be special education or students in an AP class or dual credit, where those tests don't change no matter what. But in terms of how that's working, that will depend on how the teacher wants to structure that. In a sense of the high school, right now those periods are 35, so they're going to be 15 minutes shorter than what they were previously. So what does that look like in terms of that instruction so that there's no dead time? The whole idea is to make sure that those 35 minutes is where that direct instruction happens, and then the other things happen at a later part of the afternoon or where they're working independently to make sure that they get through that course material.
I'm just talking about lecture time when you're covering a subject and there's no time. So thank you.
I really hope that we don't have teachers lecturing for 80 something minutes in a classroom. That's not effective way to learn. So I think we have to give some grace to teachers that they are going to manage this. And it's not perfect. We know that. No, as everyone has said, we don't want kids online. We don't want that. So
it's just, there's a lot of subject matter to cover in the last few days to get ready for the end of the semester. And I want to make sure that the subject matters can be covered. That's my concern. Are we leaving the COVID-19 now?
All right. Yeah. So you said you had something.
Yeah,
you
I
wanted
had
to say?
something.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Right.
Can we discuss, I believe from the comments shared tonight, that our community would appreciate knowing the steps it would take at this time to reopen the schools, and we haven't closed them yet, but we know we are, at least at some of the schools. What steps would it take? I believe our community needs to have an understanding of what that would look like and what has to happen. I want to know too.
I'd be happy to answer that, Ms. Case. And again, we're not closing schools. We're returning to online learning. I just want to make sure that that's clear. Based on our current adopted metrics, our return to green, as we put it, would be when we reach a rate of 50 cases per 100,000 and a percent positivity of 5%. So when those metrics were met, we would return to in-person learning based upon what we've adopted.
So the only way that the schools would reopen in-person learning, I should have put it differently, the only way for in-person learning to happen again is for the metrics to be met. Is that correct?
That is correct, based on what we had adopted, correct.
So for us to go back to in-person, either we would have to change the metrics or a magic wand would have to be waved or over the area.
We would need to have the community spread lowered to a rate that is safe for our community, or yes, we would have to change the metrics.
And what if the metrics don't change until the vaccine goes out and it's next July when there's significance change? Does that mean our schools' physical buildings will be closed until then?
Well, I'm certainly not very good with hypotheticals at this point, given the pandemic. I think all of our crystal balls are collectively broken. But I think what I would say to that is if we saw that, much like I think saw this fall when we followed the guidance from the Arizona Department of Health Services, which indicated that at the time that we would need to wait until case rates got at the rate of 10 per 100,000 And in speaking with medical experts, what we identified was that that was not going to happen, if you recall. We made that change to our criteria and upped that to 50. I think we have to continue to look at the science and speak with our medical experts. And if we did see something like that happen in the spring, I think we would need to make sure that we're, continuing to evaluate what that looks like. But there has not been a change, at least as of this time.
So that would mean that let's just say the numbers keep going up. The students are not in person in school. Does that show? I mean, do we rethink it because there's no it's not the students adding to that. So I'm showing my frustration because I've had so many questions asked me by so many parents, and I think they deserve to have some idea of the direction of what we're planning to do in going forward.
I'll just share kind of something along the same lines. I know oftentimes we tend to focus on, our area in the district and the state. Just as an example out there, because again, I think part of the challenge is everybody's trying to find that right balance. You may have caught in the news recently this week, New York City schools just announced that they were returning back to online learning. Their criteria for returning to online learning was a 3% positivity rate. 3% positivity rate. Arizona right now is at an 11% positivity rate. So I think part of the challenge is trying to recognize, kind of going back to that fire analogy, when do we see the embers and when is it time to get out of there before the fire gets too high? What I would say is that our current case rates, and I appreciate the very colorful graphs that were shared just a little while earlier. But it speaks to where we are at in terms of cases right now. I was kind of wondering if that case rate today was in the top 5. I appreciated that because I had an inkling we might be there. I mean, that's really, frankly, kind of scary right now. And I really worry about what that means just for our community in terms of safety, particularly with the holidays coming up. The irony too is when you look back at history, I know sometimes there's that saying that history repeats itself. Go back to 1912 and read up on what happened this time of year in 1912 during the flu pandemic in that year. And what you'll find is as people were returning back from World War I and they were having lots of parades and they were having celebrations and the holidays, it's the same thing happening right now. Frankly, that is frightening to me.
So is there a possibility that we could return to school? I know we would have to take some changes in policy, but if we had teachers who wanted to teach in person and students who wanted to be there in person, could we match them up?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ms. Case. I know that's something that we have explored and actually reached out to legal counsel in reference to. What we were advised is that creates an issue in terms of equal access, where if teachers were volunteering, and let's say you were able to get teachers at Sonora and Sky Elementary, third grade to return, but you weren't able to get enough teachers at Desert Shadows Elementary to return in that third grade. It creates an issue with open access, equal access for students. Again, according to the guidance that we got from legal, there are already school districts across the country that are running to issues and lawsuits with that, particularly as it pertains to programs like special education, specialized programming, ELL gifted, because they can very easily make a case that they're not getting the same level of education as a result of that difference there.
Okay, I will have to come up with some new questions the next board meeting. Thank you.
Dr. Skidmore?
I just have one comment. And of course, it really doesn't pertain to me because I will not be here in January. but I've been around the block for 50 years professionally in education. I'm the former president of United Parent Council. And as I looked at some of the folks' behavior tonight, I thought, my goodness, they're lucky I wasn't the president of United Parent Council then. And further, I'm the daughter of a dentist, and I'm the sister of a dentist. In April, I spent a month, 3 weeks in ICU with a breathing tube. I have quite unique experiences in the world of education. And the thing that I find most disturbing about the metrics is the inattention to individual schools. And it would seem to me that I have spent my entire career talking about one size does not fit all. And yet, when I look at the alternative school, Sweetwater, they have 0 cases. What's fair about closing Sweetwater? Because those kids really need to be there. And so I would urge you, if you could ever come together and have some reasonable discussions to look at that issue. Because to me, one size does not fit all.
So does anybody else have anything on the COVID-19 update, or are we ready to move on to the last item on the agenda, which is revisions to instructional model?
Thank you, President Greenberg. Following up on our discussion at the November 5th study session, I'd like to provide an update and proposed revisions to the instructional model for the second semester once in-person learning is available to address the challenges of teaching both in person and in PV Connect simultaneously, as we refer to often as dual modality teaching. So just a brief recap of our previous actions and discussions to date. I'll share some feedback that we elicited and received from parents, teachers, and principals. I'd like to share the updated proposed revisions for second semester to our instructional model, and then some next steps following tonight's discussion. So to briefly recap, leading up to our recent study session, we conducted a survey of certified staff. That's survey number 1. In that survey, it was identified that dual modality teaching and time to plan for dual modality teaching were the greatest challenges. 64% of certified responses expressed a desire to eliminate dual modality instruction. We convened a stakeholder work team consisting of teachers, support staff, principals, parents, and central office staff to develop proposals to address the challenges identified. From the work team, the following recommendations emerged as possible solutions to address the problem. Those included the wireless Wednesdays, the daily early dismissal days. We also looked at re-rostering or sharing students among teachers within the grade level at elementary, and allowing teachers with flexibility for PV Connect students to join portions of in-person periods and lessons. However, we recognized at that time, though, that previous recommendations did not eliminate dual modality instruction, which was, as I pointed out earlier, the primary concern. So recapping some of the feedback from our board study session, we heard things like think outside of the box, provide flexibility for schools, that schools should be the decision makers, that we did need to eliminate dual modality instruction, take anything off of teachers' plates that wasn't required, and consider different approaches at the elementary and the secondary level. So following that feedback from the study session, we determined that the recommendations of the work team needed to be taken further and that a more concerted effort to eliminate dual modality teaching needed to be made. So to do that, we solicited additional feedback from members of the work group, certified employees, principals, directors, and families. This included a feedback form for the work group members, an additional survey to certified employees, a feedback form to elicit parent feedback, principal meetings to gather feedback, and consulting with directors on the logistics of potential options. So from the second survey, the follow-up survey to certified staff, or survey number 2, we asked teachers their preference regarding the 3 options for second semester or when we return to in-person learning. Those included eliminating dual modality teaching, all online Wednesdays for additional planning time, or early release days for additional planning time. As you can see from the results, eliminating dual modality continued to remain the preferred option for teachers. This preference was more pronounced at the elementary level. This was followed by all online Wednesdays, and early release days was the least preferred option for all levels. We also reached out to our families. As you recall, we sent that form out. We received 11,365 family responses, which represent 18,607 students on our parent feedback form. I'd also like to say that we appreciate the time that our families took in completing the form and expressing their views regarding all of these options. So specifically regarding all online Wednesdays, early release days, and re-rostering, those were the 3 things that were included on that form. Our parents expressed support for all online Wednesdays as a solution to give teachers more planning time to be successful with dual modality teaching. Overall, 58% of families indicated they strongly agreed or agreed they could support this option. And this level of support was consistent across families of students at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Regarding early dismissal days, our parents did not express support for those, with a plurality of parents, 33%, indicating they strongly disagreed they could support this option. And only 38% of families overall indicated they strongly agreed or agreed they could support this option. And again, this was consistent across all grade levels, elementary, middle, and high school. We also asked families with students in elementary grades if they could support the idea of re-rostering classes at the semester to eliminate dual modality teaching. This included the possibility that students may have a different teacher second semester, and that students in the PV Connect model may be assigned a teacher from a different school. As was shared by the work team, feelings on switching teachers mid-year were mixed, but were generally positive. 49% of elementary families indicated they could support this option to eliminate dual modality teaching. So with some specifics regarding elementary, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Jarris, who'll share some of the input we received from elementary principals.
Yes, thank you. We asked our elementary principals to look at their current situations to help identify opportunities to reduce dual modality instruction within the schools. This involved looking at existing staffing, as well as the number of students that are currently attending in person and on PV Connect, and finding ways if they could use their existing staffing to reduce those opportunities. Based on current enrollment in PV Connect, and I will stress current enrollment, existing staffing could be used to eliminate dual modality in approximately 50% of the grade level settings, grade level setting being a grade level within a specific school. For example, if a 5th grade team has 3 teachers with 75 students, and 25 of those students are in PV Connect, those students could be re-rostered so that one teacher has all the PV Connect students and the other 2 teachers divide the in-person students. In about 10% of the grade level settings, schools have identified other solutions, including team teaching or utilizing PV Connect for all students just to teach one modality. The remaining 40% of grade level settings, which is about 73 different grade level settings, would require additional staff support, either from a district level or another school. So students, where they can't meet it in one school, they would find a PV Connect opportunity for them at another school. Through this examination, it was also determined that it's going to be not possible to eliminate dual modality teaching entirely, especially in specialty signature programs. In particular, our self-contained gifted, pull-out gifted, self-contained special education programs, preschool, and some of the immersion settings, they will likely be limited in their ability to eliminate dual modality. We are also exploring other possible options to support students who are quarantining and isolating for when we don't have dual modality. So when those students are going home for 10 to 14 days, what opportunity do they have for instruction, since we are eliminating the opportunity to just log in with the other PB Connect students? So we are still exploring what options might exist there.
Thank you, Mr. Jarris. And to speak on some of the specifics regarding secondary, I'll turn it over to Mr. Long.
Thank you. Our secondary work group focused on can dual modality be eliminated or greatly reduced at the middle and high school level. When we took a look at that, we decided as we analyzed master schedules that the only place that could have some impact would be at some of the core areas such as English. But with that said, only 10 to 25% of the staff would see any type of impact due to the number of singleton classes or honors or AP. So it's very limited in what could be done. And what could be done would cause some increase in class sizes. So class sizes could be upward of 35 in order to create a class in addition to a online class. So possible, but there will be discomfort created in the large number size of students in the classroom. We looked at possibly adding additional staff or adding 6/5 contracts, and some of that could be done, but still it will have such a small impact. And there's staffing challenges. There's not a lot of teachers to hire and determining who would end up teaching those sections. As a result, the secondary work group decided that it's pretty much impossible to eliminate the dual modality teaching at the secondary level at this time. However, in order to improve that teaching, that they needed time. So that work group discussed the early release schedule and the asynchronous Wednesdays and the online learning on Wednesday, and decided that they could live with either one of those. There was a preference for the work group at that time with the early dismissal that was prior to the survey that went out. As you can see, the survey is a little bit different now, and the secondary could still support the Wednesdays, but the main point is that the teachers require the time to do the dual modality teaching well. So as an example, we examined a high school master calendar, and this kind of shows when that master calendar was analyzed, how many classes could be impacted with combining classes and what could be done. So we had 2 out of 58 elective classes. None of the math classes could be combined at this particular school, and 6 science classes. And I won't read all of those, but that kind of gives you an example of what could happen at a typical high school and what could be done. But because of the class sizes and trying to find the teachers to do that, it is best to leave the dual modality teaching. And that was the consensus of the work group.
Could I ask a question about that? You said preparation for dual modality and you down to time, and then you had daily early recess schedule, release schedule, and then asynchronous Wednesdays. You said this is the best we can do at this time. My question is, when kids get ready to register for the fall, okay, could that be worked into the mix that you could figure it out ahead of time based on the classes that the kid wanted to take and the demand on the schedule? And I think that that's something worth looking at. And so you are prepared in the event that, well, I don't think PV Connect is ever going to go away. I mean, it's a favorite of sports teams in one semester and out the next.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore, for pointing that out. The analyzing that went on with the master schedules are existing master schedules. So as high schools create a master schedule, that could be investigated as they're implementing, because this is when they're working that now. It would be difficult to build that, however, without knowing the number of students that would want that, because then we would get kind of trapped into
But
locking that.
guess
But
what,
not a- but a
kids?
possibility.
Guess what, kids? You have to know that. We have to know that when we do your schedule.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. Based on that feedback from our last study session, from everything that you've heard, we're making the following recommendations for revisions to the instructional model. Again, this is for second semester or when in-person learning resumes. And so at the elementary level, we are recommending that we move forward with trying to re-roster to minimize the number of classrooms teaching in that dual modality. And then at the secondary level, based on the feedback we heard from all of our different stakeholder groups, we are proposing to implement those all online Wednesdays to allow teachers time for planning, assessment, and communication, recognizing again that we would not be able to eliminate dual modality teaching at the secondary level. Some additional details regarding those proposed revisions. Both PV in person and PV Connect will follow the same schedule, start time and end time. But PV Connect teachers are encouraged to allow scheduled breaks from screen time. And this is because classes such as specials, pullouts for gifted, special education, and ELL will follow that same schedule. And those teachers may be working with students that are in person or online, although not simultaneously, through the PV Connect model. So again, those special teachers might be working with both of those different kinds of groups of students, but not at the same time. Also, depending upon the level of interest from families for PV in person or PV Connect, as Dr. Jarris had alluded to earlier, existing school staff may be able to re-roster to accommodate the demand. In cases where that may not be possible, we'll work with human resources to identify those limitations in staffing. And HR is already working to try to staff up a small group of PV Connect teachers at the district level to support those students in cases where the existing school staff cannot accommodate that demand. Again, you, I think, heard that last time we met, that there is a available pool of some teachers who may be on a leave of absence, and we may be able to secure them to help with PV Connect model. So again, while the second semester may seem very far off, as has come up a few times this evening, we are just 18 school days away. And so in order to determine the level of interest for the different models, in-person, PV Connect, and PV Online for second semester, in particular, we'll be working with our elementary principals to ask families for their commitment to an instructional model for the second semester or when in-person learning resumes. Because of the shifts that we need to make in staffing to eliminate the dual modality teaching, we need to emphasize that switching between instructional models will not be possible. And that's unless, circumstances change somehow, like if we have a widespread availability of a vaccine, perhaps. But again, we wouldn't be looking at making changes, again, because of all the shifting we would have to do. And so, based on those parent selections, we would, again, continue to work with the administrative teams and teachers to reschedule so that teachers are working either online or in person. We would plan for all online Wednesdays for those middle school and high school students second semester or when in-person learning resumes. And again, as Dr. Jarris had alluded to, we are continuing efforts with the elementary members of our work team and our stakeholder groups regarding specifics on how we will support students that need to quarantine and isolate at the elementary level, and whether there is a need for all online Wednesdays at the elementary level at all, seeing as dual modality teaching would be eliminated for most classes. We are, as was alluded to in some of the things we had committed to previously, continuing to evaluate any activities or requirements that we can take off of teachers and principals' plates to lighten the load moving forward this year. And I think the overall challenge with all of this is, there are no real easy decisions in some of these. In this scenario, everybody is trying to do everything that they can to help support students, but we need to really make a team effort here for everybody to be able to put something on the table so that we come up with a solution that really helps support all of our kids the best that we can as we go back in second semester. So that concludes the presentation and discussion, or at least the information I wanted to share this evening regarding revisions to the instructional model, and I'd be glad to answer any other questions that you might have.
Well, actually, before we get to questions from the board, we do have a card. So Trevor Nelson, do you want to come on up?
Thank you, President Greenberg. Actually, I want to answer your question. So based on the summer, it was about 6 to 8 weeks before we got down to normal spread where things could open back up. So once we go closed over the summer, when this happened, it was 6 from this point when they closed the bars and gyms and everything, which is similar to, I think, going away
But
from
without closing bars and restaurants and gyms,
it could
that
get
won't
worse.
happen.
Actually,
But
we,
sorry, I'm
we
off
need to
topic.
focus on.
I apologize. I'm off topic. But I do want to talk about, I was on the elementary committee. That's why I'm here to talk. And a couple of things that came up in the data that was shared with us is, yes, dual modality was the #1 most common. It was 64% in the free response thing about the worst part of my job, or I don't know how the question was asked, but basically what sucks the most, for lack of a better term. But before that was a bunch of data that was very specific. And there were some key things that stuck out is the most critical. The first one was plan time. Teachers needed more plan time. And that was the same across all grade bands. Workload was too much. They didn't feel like they could give appropriate support to their students or meet the educational needs. There were SEL needs that were being missed. They figured there was data that the teachers thought most students could learn and were learning in the dual modality. And then there was an issue with job satisfaction across the board. So I think what's getting lost in this conversation is that, yes, the dual modality is the most obvious thing to cut out. It's the biggest change. And it's hard. It's not easy. I'm not here representing my company, but I work for a company and we do this. And it's very difficult and it takes a lot of extra training to get teachers up to speed. And just, it didn't happen that way because of circumstance. And there's no finger pointing. It's hard to get up to speed, and the district didn't have enough time. When we train teachers at my company, we don't do it in 2 weeks or 2 days. We have a long training period. So just keep that in mind. So I think the biggest thing that's being missed is that there are lots of things that are on the teachers' plates that aren't being removed. And if we remove dual modality, we're not solving for those problems either. The things that we came up with in at least the elementary side that I was in, were the Wednesdays, the half days, to give time for the teachers to do all those things. Yes, they're still teaching dual modality, but the discussion was around, wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to be teaching 6 hours a day in front of a screen with kids, worrying about ones here and there and everywhere, and then doing all my other work? What if I had time to meet with small groups? What if I had time to meet with my son who has an IEP, who's gotten that many hours since we've come back? Luckily, he's okay. My wife and I are both ex-teachers. We're fine. Our SPED teacher's awesome. So just keep that in mind. The other thing is the re-rostering. Now, I have some experience with this. Some of you were on the board a few years ago when my kindergartner, her teacher was taken away from her. And it was absolutely devastating. And that's what you're thinking about doing. You're thinking about taking these kids' teachers away. The one constant they've had since school has opened, they've had their teacher. And if you re-roster these kids, all these issues, everyone talking about mental health for their children, you just created another one. So keep that in mind before you knee-jerk reaction and think, well, we can solve it by re-rostering. It's not a clean solution. I know it's not super clean. I know it's not easy. It's really hard. I was in those rooms multiple times. I've been on the Zoom calls. Just take a step back before you re-roster. It's not the solution you think it is. Thank you.
Thank you. So, any member of the board want to, Mrs. Ventura?
Okay, I've got a couple of clarifications. For the next steps for elementary, we're saying that the elementary families need to commit to PV in person, PV Connect, or PV online for the second semester or when in-person learning resumes. And I just want to clarify, if the modality is still online learning at that time, families would still need to commit because the re-rostering would occur for second semester, whether it is in person or continuing online at that time.
Yeah, correct. If either way, when we start second semester, we would want to have that in place for several reasons. One, again, so that those teachers can start building those relationships. Semester is a clean spot, in terms of planning and grading. For all of those reasons, we'd want to make sure that was in place at that time, because trying to make schedule changes in the middle of a quarter, you can imagine, is not
Right.
desirable.
Okay, I think it said or in some places, and I just wanted to make sure that that was clear that starting second semester would be when changes occurred, no matter what the modality was at that time. And also, it's stated differently on one of the other slides about continuing efforts with elementary on how they're going to work with those students who are quarantined because there is no opportunity to go back to PV Connect for those students. But I would have a hard time having a full day off every single week to mitigate that across the board when it's going to be sporadic in different classrooms at different times. So that would, if we're doing the removing the dual modality from this set of teachers to then also throw in an additional Wednesdays off, I have a hard time supporting that concept.
Mrs. Case?
So let me understand, and Mrs. Mature just brought this up. So at the beginning of the semester, K6 would be re-rostered to do this, and parents would have to choose before second semester which one they were going to go into. Is that correct?
Correct. That's the proposal.
Okay. So for the most part, these teachers know each other well. And one of the things that I suggested in one of our previous meetings is that they share teaching different subjects. And I believe that would help bridge some of that gap of change. So this teacher does a really fabulous job teaching a social studies concept, and she could end up teaching all of the children for that subject. And she would get some of the ones she used to have, and then they could trade off and on. It's just an idea that they could trade off certain lessons so those kids get to be familiar with the teacher they had gotten used to. Just an idea.
Yeah, it sounds like, sorry, Dr. Jess, were you going to?
No, I was just going to say that, yes, that is an option that many schools are doing. And yet we're also looking at allowing flexibilities for schools to make those decisions on their own as well. But that is certainly an option that's been out there.
Does anybody else have any other comments? So if there's no other comments, last on the agenda is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.